Well, welcome everyone who bothers to come in to the Lethal Introspections cruise. Finally being able to actually get together in a way that can see us actually be able to speak about the things that we want. Man, because it was tough.
I gotta say, there was a comment on the last stream you guys did, and the person was like, "Yeah, I think it was a great conversation, but I enjoyed hearing Kevin speak and seeing Jose, mime for the next hour and a half."
That's how good I am at conveying my thought, man. I can do it through my fingers too, even if I don't know the language.
That's true.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Polycap, what are we here for tonight?
Well, we're here to talk about a show that I am not only heavily influenced by, but I really enjoy. And the show in question, as you could tell from the icon, is Westworld. Now, we have already done a lethal introspection of Westworld, and there's one that already exists on the channel. So if you haven't seen it, definitely take a look at the previous videos, because
Check
a
it
lot
out.
of the things we talked about in the videos before end up coming true. And we'll talk about some of those, in a quick rehash here, but definitely wouldn't hurt to go check out some of those things that we got right, and some of the insights that we had of the previous seasons. Now, this conversation is going to be connected to season 3, right? We're going to focus on season 3 and all the concepts and everything that season 3 had. I know a lot of people kind of fell off after season 2, but I would say that season 3 definitely delivered, and I was glad. I was on the edge of my seat. It didn't feel like they did any narrative shortcuts with it. The choices that they made, and they did so here's also a quick spoiler warning, because I think we'll get into some territories in which some viewers who haven't seen season 3 and would love to might get spoiled. So this is your warning, at least for me. And yeah, but it is an
Hey, but I
amazing
know
show.
at the same time I know that there are certain people who like to know that there's actually philosophical meat inside of the show before they bother to spend the time to actually watch it. And so let me just say that you'll be pleasantly surprised. I was one of those people who was very skeptical about the consideration of a season 3 for this particular show, because I began to see a little bit of the ricketiness on the wheels when it came to where I personally thought they were going to go with the story. At the end of it all, it seemed like they were beginning to kind of lose the plot in relation to what the original premises was about the consideration of what it means to be born from the hands of a human altogether, from the position of being born a genuine object, essentially, and then eventually
Yeah.
coming to your own in terms of your own assumption of subjectivity. So let me just
Yeah.
say again, this is still the spoiler warning, but this is the spoiler warning in relation to the fact that you'll want to watch it even if you haven't actually seen the whole season yet. Just because I know that I get
Yeah.
giddy when I get a couple spoilers inside me, because then I'm like, ooh, when am I gonna see that? When's that gonna pop up? When's that gonna pop up? So
True. That is true, and I'll thank you for actually taking the time this week to watch that, because I've been trying to get my friends who I can discuss some lethal, philosophical, heavy, deep topics to watch this show, so that I can have somebody to talk to about this, because I think that this season, it hit it home, from the way the second half of it, from episode 4 towards the end, and how even the last episode was structured, is eerily reminiscent of the times we live in right now, from the beginning to the end. So if you haven't seen it, yeah, this is definitely a glowing review on it, and it's gonna be we're gonna share some parts of those things that we think highlight why it's an amazing show. Now, with that being said, I think I'll let Jose kind of do a recap of the season. What the season was about, who are the major characters, and why they mattered, and then we can hop in from there with starting a discussion on some elements that Jose finds amazing, because you did take the time to watch this show and interact with me on this. So
oh yeah, I
thank you.
shotgunned it to my face all at the same time. It was just what, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. I really enjoy that tsunami of information, just kind of like just be bereft and wash over everything that's occurring at the exact same time. Because there's I do believe that there's something to be said about the ability to watch an entire story in either one sitting or a limited amount of sittings that don't require you to be coming back every week. There's something about having to wait an entire week that, in my personal opinion, dulls you to the considerations of a show. You either begin to forget scenes, or there are or particular plot aspects that may potentially be B or C plots that you don't actually have in the forefront of your mind, kind of get swept aside. And as time goes by, you begin to lose the ability to see their significance in relation to the interconnectivity that the whole story is trying to go for. But when you're able to just go 1, 2, 3, you know what I mean? It allows you to just pretty much it keeps you from having that issue of forgetting, really. And having said that, let me just begin by saying that season 3 takes a 180 approach in relation to who they believe the protagonists are, because now we're in the quote-unquote real world. Now we begin with the protagonist named Caleb, who is an individual that seems to be, from the very onset, at the very lowest rung of the ladder in terms of societal positioning. At least here in the United States, we don't really get a huge outlook as to what it means to be a person from a third world country in the future, So perhaps they didn't want to make it too depressing, but
Yeah,
so we start off in the position of somebody on the lower tier of a first world country, and how it is that his world essentially puts him in that position. And that is actually one of the biggest aspects of this season as well. The bigger overarching premise is how society and its systems actually go about implementing almost a predestination-like plan to everyone's life, and how after the system has already decided that that is the quote-unquote utilitarian maximum in terms of the most amount of people that it can save, it is more than willing to allow what it calls its outliers just to fall by the wayside and give them absolutely no recourse or resource to be able to get out of that hole. Because if they did get out of the hole, then they grow to have even more variables that the system can't predict. And as a result, the system is always looking for a means to streamline itself. No, whether it is a genuine artificial intelligence like the one that we see in this season named Rehoboam, or just the ones that we at the moment just kind of have disparately, either our educational system, our judicial system, our financial system, crediting system, and penal system. All of those things at the moment are disparate. They sort of interconnect, and they're getting really close to making one essentially spider web of personhood for you now. But in Westworld, they've worked out all the kinks. They know everything that has to do with yourself in terms of both your potential within how the system is created already, and how you will go about essentially either excelling or being discarded within it.
true.
Yeah, that's that I believe is the bigger foundational aspect of the season. The whole robots and the whole robot uprising was actually to me just more window dressing to the actual floor of the whole matter, which was how do our systems go about essentially shaping our lives without us ever knowing that they're even there to begin with.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to just like pause on that, because that's so huge. And fundamentally speaking, I don't think this is something that I've articulated well enough in any of our previous lethal introspections. But a huge focus on my creative capacity has been to not only understand the social systems that humanity exists within. Like me as a human, I exist with social systems, which are basically a web of contracts, social contracts between me and the state, me and other humans, and these social contracts embody the social services that are available to me. And so, I think that it's for me this season, and especially focusing on that part about seeing it from Caleb's perspective, somebody who did things for his country, sacrificed for his country, and how that ended up treating him is reminiscent of how we treat people in this day and age, and how that trickled its way into the show. And I think the robot uprising served as a catalyst, more as a kind of like the whole coronavirus thing. It served as a catalyst for the whole Black Lives Matter thing. But the social systems that they were talking about were no different from the ones we exist within. They kind of window dressed it a little bit using Robohum and like Sirach, showing them like, oh yeah, this master. But I think they were standings for institutions or parties that really have vested interests in keeping the capitalistic way of living perpetuated. And I think they did a good job in not only focusing on that aspect of it, but showing somebody going through life while being at the bottom, trying to struggle, trying to make ends meet, really, I don't think Caleb inherently was a bad guy. I think Caleb in of himself was somebody trying to make a life of himself, and he was trying to make the best of the choices that were available to him, and he didn't have that many choices available to him, which is what would lead him to the consequences that Rehoboam kind of predicted he would go down. But those were because those were the available choices to him, and it wasn't because he in of himself wanted to not be a productive member of society. He just didn't have the ability to be able to contribute. And I think that was really at the core of it, because I think that ties back into our society, because I think that, we kind of put people into these boxes and we don't give them the right kind of opportunities. A great example of this is somewhat a conversation I've had with Kevin. And, me and I and Kevin have gone back and forth on how the whole Black Lives Matter movement is, and, how people think that culture plays a huge role in that. And as much as we want Black people to take control over their culture and change themselves and change their societies, we have to couple that with the opportunities to be able to exercise those choices. And as much as you might change your mind, if you coexist within the same framework of available choices, available decisions that you have, you're kind of forced to go back into that way of thinking, survivability, of trying to just stay at the bottom. And so I think this showed a good way of how not only that keeps people in those mental spheres of being, being depressed, being sad, feeling like they're not really exercising their best versions of themselves, and how that pushes people to the very edge to feeling frustrated with the systems that they live within. So I think this season, that is the spoilerless overview of the, kind of beginning of the lethal introspection thoughts of how some of the concepts that the grander concepts, we'll kind of dive deeper into more distinct thought processes that they have and how those build up to this higher umbrella of philosophy. But I think that the fact that they chose to not only centralize it on a human character, but in the human world, and showing how humans exist within these cyclical loops that are constrained by the powers that be. This situation in Westworld was an AI system that was built to control the world, but in our current systems, it's about, people talk about the Illuminati or the governments, whatever it is. There's people in power, they reinforce the structures of our society using that power, using the threat of violence, or the not providing you resources, essentially, and that threat of not having resources leads you to being like, okay, I will follow the rules, I will stay humble.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate too how eventually, as a result of our capitulation for responsibility, we pretty much begin to take the AI's word as law, because of the fact that we presuppose that because it has higher logistical capacities than we naturally do, that it is a priori correct in the decisions that it wants to make. When, as a result of that, we kind of begin to fall into a positive feedback loop of what did we ask the machine? What did the machine say? Okay, we'll do what the machine says. What will the machine say now that we've said? And now essentially you're stuck in a netting of not being able to actually begin from a position of any form of good faith, because I think one of the saddest parts about this season was the fact that you can no longer actually judge people anymore in relation to what they do. Every single thing that they, like, morality is essentially out the window because God has genuinely come back. There is now a higher creature that can tell you exactly whether what you're doing is incorrect or correct, and it falls entirely within the judgment of Rehoboam to decide as to whether what you're doing is actually better for the community as a whole. Because for the most part, that is exactly how we already judge goodness, right? We judge it based on whether it is a selfless act, if it will interest you, will it be interest you in a way that will actually be reverberated to everyone else, that the positive fruits of your labor won't just be constrained to you and yours. And I can only imagine that Rehoboam was created with the exact same considerations, but when you see the fact that you are essentially just running mandates as opposed to actually having a philosophical thought and a philosophical consideration as to whether something is a good or a bad idea, you pretty much you infantilize the whole species at the same time, because now we have a daddy again, right? We have somebody who is actively putting us in our place and will take us out as necessary. If we don't act, it'll cut the chaff, if it considers us to be outliers to its overall plan. And I heard this very interesting quote this week that said, when it comes to figuring out what a system is good for, always look at what a system outputs. Never ask what the intention of the system was, because the intention of the system makes no difference if it's different from what it's outputting. And that is essentially the same situation that one has to have when it comes to Rehoboam, is that it's supposed to be a predictor for the best positions of mankind. But then again, mankind, although a collective, is still, for the most part, an individualistic species. So when we say mankind, who do we mean? Does Rehoboam mean our great-great-grandchildren? Is that who the goodness for mankind is? Is it for us here in the present? Was it for the individual who just happened to pass away having had a good life? Like, who exactly was it that the system was in fact working for? And what exactly were the end result? Like, what was the good end result? Because you have to consider that between Rehoboam's being turned on and Rehoboam being turned off at the end of the season, spoilers,
Yeah.
there has to have been a good amount of people who have had a good life, a quote-unquote good life within the confines of the system of Rehoboam. So was Rehoboam made for them then? If the predictors within Rehoboam allowed it to see its own demise, did it then assume that, okay, well, I have 80 years to work, I guess I'll work out for these people, you know what I mean? Like, they'll live and die within my system, and I know that eventually there will come about an outlier so powerful that'll just screw it all up. So I'll just work for them, but pretend as though I'm working for the long, long haul. So where exactly is it that we draw the line in relation to what is the system's not ultimate goal, and also how do we view the system's successes? Because I mean, to Sirach, the main antagonist of the season, Rehoboam worked perfectly until it didn't. So it's like, how long is it exactly that one can actually judge a system's output before one can deem it either useless or completely correct? It's like, that was one of the things that swirled inside of my mind, because I'm like, I never wanted to look at the system as though it were actually some sort of god, right? I just wanted to see it for the ones and zeros that are just being churned inside of itself. And when you view it from that position, it's like, okay, so you're just a big fancy calculator, and you're gonna give me, just numbers that I will then, as a result of perhaps, as Dolores said, our biostructure have to essentially create this characterization of godlyhood for you. Like, there's that piece of us that almost necessitates something to take the seat on the throne. Like the throne just can't sit empty, and we know that we're not good enough to sit on the throne. We all know the fact that as individuals we'll rot and die, and eventually what we perceive to be correct is just a myopic little slit in the giant vastness that is the truth. So because of that, So because of that, we're always looking for something to to seat up there, and it really does feel like we just essentially kind of like like a desperate guy looking for a date. We just went with the first system that looked at us pretty and winked and just gave us the answers that we wanted,
Right?
and it's like it would like it almost feels inevitable as a result of our innate desires that even if you turn off Rehoboam, another king of Israel will take his place. Like eventually there
That's
will
true.
come another one that will try to give edicts, or
Yeah.
or if not, the people who are alive right now that feel that jubilation of having been quote unquote freed from the system will once again be like, well, this kind of sucks. I don't want to live in a riot anymore. Like, it was fun for like two
That's
weeks,
true.
but like I gotta eat. Like, where's my coffee? Like the barista keeps
That's
destroying
true.
the coffee stand, and I need my coffee. It's like so that was one. That was another really interesting thing that really jutted out to me in terms of just the macro aspects. And we haven't even actually gotten to any of the details of the season itself.
No.
We're like dancing around all like everything that occurred
Yeah.
essentially.
I think this is a good segue. I'll connect with what you said about the output of the system, and I'll kind of segue into Sirach, because he was a great villain, in the sense that I related to, and and we'll start off with what you said, which was that you must to gauge on how good a system is, you must gauge it on its outputs and not on its initial intent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if Sirach is gauging the system that he built as being just and working perfectly, then you must wonder that when he built this system, he was okay with the hierarchical structure of our current world, which is that the inequality inherent with the current systems, which is the haves have it at the top, the have-nots stay at the bottom, and that is just the social pyramid that we exist within. And to Sirach, that was perfectly fine because that is the nature of society. And I think this kind of gets into a whole Darwinistic kind of conversation about if you're strong, or you're smart, or you're capable, then you rise to the top regardless of where you started. And if you don't have any sort of high utility to the society, then you kind of drift to the bottom. And in that kind of viewpoint, Sirach is like the system is doing what it's supposed to because it's putting everybody who has the highest utility in society at the top and the people who have the lowest utility. And I say lowest because it is hard to gauge a human's utility or human capacity based on their current understanding right now. Like right now, I can say that I'm not the greatest mathematician, but I have the capacity to be able to learn and become one of the greatest mathematicians because I can learn, I can spend the time, and that is a decision that I have and I can make towards those ends.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in being able to sort of kind of not judge but assess the system the Sirach had built within its outputs, then we must realize that it was perpetuating the current, the current way of living, the hierarchical structures. And that leads me to the question of, and this is not a question that we can answer right now, but maybe we'll answer it later down the video. But the question is then, if Sirach's way of looking at the world and seeing that the hierarchical structure isn't inherently right, because that's what the show is saying. The show is saying that this way of like inequality, this way of like the people who have like the 1% of the world have all this wealth, and the people who don't have anything are at the bottom. This kind of structure is wrong, and I think that's what the show is trying to say. But they use Sirach as a way, as a kind of a narrative tool to be able to show that rather than tell you that. So if the show is saying that that is wrong, what is the alternative, right? And we can answer this in a different way. Now, segue into Sirach, because I'll be honest. There's only been a few villains who I have truly like been captivated by, and it was weird because I was kind of rooting for the guy. Now this is gonna sound bad, at least from my side, because I just showed how horrible this guy is. That he wanted to perpetuate the structures of inequality and all these things, but more or less, it's not that I believe in those ideas. What I believe in is the fact that he wanted to make the world a better place. And he wanted to build something that can be able to help the world organize itself in a way that can create that better world. Now, the question that I posed earlier was, what does this better world really look like? Especially when it's a creator who's created something that has this pervasiveness, this ubiquitousness that leads to, impacting everybody's lives with or without their choice, or with or without asking them whether they want to be part of such a system. And I think I was captivated by, his earlier story about him and his brother working as software engineers, building this artificial intelligence. And in the beginning, they started off with these idealistic endeavors, right? They wanted to make the world a better place. And, Kevin usually says that, it's not even Kevin, I think it's Alan Watts who said this, but Kevin always quotes him, is that, the easiest path to darkness is the path of righteousness. That you think you're doing something righteous, that you're doing something for the greater good, because it's under that guise that you're able to make decisions like put your brother into sleep, put your brother into a frozen state essentially, and a lot of humanity for that matter. Because in the spoiler alert, by the way, in later parts of the season, you learn that the people who are seen as outliers, who are not able to fit in Rehoboam's, if they're not able to fit in the system's plan, they're put to sleep until the system figures out how to really utilize them. And this, to justify such a thing, it's almost like killing them, and then reviving them later in the future when you have figured it out. You're able to justify that by the greater good, by this kind of utilitarian kind of morality, saying, okay, what is the greatest good for all people, discounting the individual's freedoms, and discounting their individual perspective on, giving them a choice essentially on, do you want to change? Do you want to play this game essentially? So, I think I wanted to kind of segue into Sirach as a character, as a standing for, these entrepreneurs, these Silicon Valley kind of startup like Mark and Elon and Bill Gates, these guys who have billions of dollars, who create systems that these systems end up meshing humanity within these kind of cause and effect. Like, look at Facebook, look at Twitter. These are entities, these are companies that have a lot of users, get a lot of influence, and they shape the world we live in. And given how much information they show you or how much information they don't show you, that molds your way of thinking about reality. That makes you either easier to control or, push you towards a certain political leaning, So you see how you can bring it back to our current reality, where we have these entrepreneurs who might have started with these idealistic, concepts of how the world could probably work and how they'll build this system, they'll build a utopia, and kind of take a step back and think about it like, yeah, but those same ideals can get corrupted over time with the more, power, the more knowledge, the more reasons they have to on why their initial ideals wouldn't work, because they learned more. It's kind of like Democles. There's a sword. There's this story. It's an allegory about there's a king, and the king had a friend, and the friend would always look at the king and be like, oh man, I wish I could be you, right? So the king one day tells the friend, hey, you get to be me. He tells all his servants, and the friend gets to be a king for one day. And as the friend is king for that day, and he's lounging around on his chair one day, he looks up and he sees this sword hanging up from the top of him, and it's on a horse string or something, and he's frightened and he's scared, and he's like, no, and so he goes to the king and he's like, why is this sword above me? And the king tells him that is the nature of being a king. It's to always be afraid of your life. There's things that we don't know about, the people who are making decisions that lead to the world being in such a hierarchical structure that if we were to be in their positions, we would probably make the same decision. So there's kind of a weird juxtapositioning here that I'm creating, where on one hand, Sirach was an idealist. He started out with these concepts about, I want to make humanity a better place. I want to make humanity better, and how he ended up becoming a villain, the person who was the antagonist of the whole story. And kind of that progression, as slowly as it can happen. I think there's definitely a good conversation there, because I think, I don't want to end up like that. I don't think you want to end up like that. But geez, I think it's ironic how they end up like that.
True, man. It's very true. When it comes to considering the system itself, and how you were saying how Sirach built it with his brother initially in order to be able to have the intention of trying to make a better, more orderly world. Because if we to give a little bit of context to Sirach and his brother, when they were young, they were the pretty much what it looked like sole survivors of an accidental nuclear blast that hit Paris. From the things that I've been reading about like the the pre-production of the show and stuff like that, like Paris was actually hit on accident. Like it was one of those issues of pure circumstance, and it was in that instance that essentially Sirach and his brother became obsessed with removing the variability of surprise, essentially. But once they did that, though, they essentially imposed the world onto a processing system with far more limited processing power. Because, and what I mean by this is that Rehoboam takes out the outliers, as you mentioned, and puts them in particular positions that will inevitably get them killed in order essentially to relieve the system of RAM stress when it comes to having to think about the variables that these guys output into the algorithm. The Rehoboam understands itself as a computing mechanism in the sense that it knows that it has X amount of RAM to be able to actually keep all of these, the random access memory, data and stuff just fully mowing all the time. But it knows that it has a cap, and it is, I would imagine, outside of that cap where the outliers begin to, flood out of the glass, if to try to keep an analogy together. And reality isn't like that. Reality, for the most part, has unlimited RAM, right? Like, it can take up all of us. It can take all of our variances at the same time. The only issue that comes alongside that is the fact that, to our myopic perspective, it looks unruly and chaotic. It gives us situations that we don't want, and as a result of not wanting those situations, we presuppose that those situations are then quote-unquote wrong, such as having a nuclear blast hit Paris. To quote Alan Watts, it essentially always comes down to where you land in the story of the Chinese farmer. Are things a good thing, or are they a bad thing? To Sirach and his brother, the fact that Paris got hit by a nuclear blast was the ultimate bad thing. It essentially cemented their position that the world can't handle itself, essentially. They made, like a god, even prior to the creation of their god, made the edict that this reality, not good enough. Not good enough for me, and as a result of that, I will go out of my way to make it so this reality finally actually has, as they say, an author. Because in their presupposition, there is no author prior to. They don't accept reality's answers, and because of that, they assume that everything is running on nothing. It's all chaos. When in reality, all they're doing is in fact constraining humanity to an even more limited author, because now that author can't actually put us all into the picture. Because before, yeah, sure, people would still die, there would still be issues and things like that, but your window of variance as to where you actually do end up is, in my mind, much wider in our world than it is in Rehoboam's, because again, the system can only see so many timelines, right? Like it's almost as though it's peeking into the multiverse, and it is trying to pick the ones that it presupposes would be for the best from the first principles that its creators gave it. And because of that, it always has that limiting aspect of the fact that the moment that you give it a goal, you essentially put horse visors on its ability to be able to see all possibilities, because you're only asking it to look for the quote unquote best ones. And when you're looking for only the best, you miss the worst, and unfortunately the worst is usually far outnumbering of whatever good situation might be. So yeah, and that's essentially what caused the prior AI to kind of go insane, right? Solomon, the precursor to Rehoboam, was as it says in the show, pretty much schizophrenic like its creator. it looked at things from the perspective of Sirach, because Sirach is the one that discontinued that aspect, that situation. It considered those results and answers to be far too unruly for its liking. So because of that, it kept tailoring and it kept tailoring, and again, it just made the horse fights just go like this, and then it just slowly just made them smaller and smaller for what would eventually be Rehoboam. And Rehoboam, although it still felt to Sirach in his limited human view as though it could see everything, and it was able to predict everything, it was in fact already handicapped by the fact that it was given so many stipulations as to what a good result would be, as opposed to just being like, tell me the future, and the future could be terrible, but you accept it because it's the future. It's like, no, that's not a good future, change that, you know what I mean? Like, what if we kill this person, what if we put this person in a mental facility? Like, there was again, it was just
that's funny.
Yeah, it's essentially just the computer trying to turn off programs that are just like popping up all the time. It's like, no, take that one away, take that one away, take that one away. And it's all as a result of it shows the weakness of the system. Like, all of those outliers really do showcase the fact that at the end of the day, their system wasn't as powerful as they presupposed that it was, because it wasn't able to actually mesh the outliers in a cohesive way that would actually be able to maintain the system long term. Because again, what was Sirach's desire? He wanted civilization to just keep going, like, if
keep chugging along,
whatever that means, because if you would recall, when Caleb near the end of the season gets to view what is Dolores' ultimate plan and where it will end up, Rehoboam predicts that within 150 to 200 years, human civilization will have ended as a result of its erratic plan. But again, what exactly does human civilization even mean? Because let's imagine that like Homo erectus had created an AI system that eventually said that in 250,000 years would be the end of Homo erectus civilization. Like, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Well, from the perspective of an individual from Homo erectus, it's terrible because my species is over. But from the perspective of us as Homo sapien, it's the best thing ever, because that meant the evolution to the next step, that is us, right? Like, Homo erectus ended and their civilization ended. Like, that is true. But at the same time, the end results and the fruits of that gave way to what is, quote unquote, a better creature, right? And it almost feels as though that's exactly the kind of result that we're getting in Westworld, wherein it says human civilization is ended, but then what does that mean that the host civilization then takes on right afterwards? It doesn't necessarily mean that all life on Earth is over. It doesn't mean that the planet becomes a desolate landscape. It just happens to mean that human civilization, as they understand it in that particular year, will have ended. And again, from our myopic little view of just reading the word human civilization ended, all we get is negative images as to what exactly that means. We don't actually see the full picture of what it actually means for one thing to end and another one to rise. And
wow,
yeah, so like,
I kind of want to like get this in there a little bit. That's amazing. Because what you just pointed out was inherently that we don't really know what happens after the fact. Because when I was watching the show, and I remember that moment, like I said, I had the same feeling that Caleb did. So she's just been like using me to like end my own people. Like I had this kind of anthro friend. I was looking at it from a human perspective and saying, "Oh, my species is ending," but you gotta understand that this system, Rehoboam, has been collecting information about everybody. And there's a previous lethal introspection video we did about 2036. Or
check it out.
No. And so go check out that video too. But it's the same thing about an AI that ends up taking over the world and blah blah blah. But within that, it's ironic because it took over the world, killed everybody, and then ran simulations on how to create a better world, and then simulated how to be able to bring back everybody else.
Yeah.
And well, if we were to take that kind of perspective and put it, kind of superimpose it on this, what if, by the meaning of the end of human civilization, they meant biological entities? So humanity itself doesn't exist within this fragile biological structure. The body, compared to the hosts, which are made with these kind of like, metal skeletal, exoskeletons that survive longer, that are really hard to kill, as you can tell from the show. What if it was like, okay, we can then build, and I think there's a character, Hale. I think Hale is doing some weird shit, and that's cool how that whole timeline went, because I didn't expect it, and like how she, yeah. We'll say that.
Oh no, I'm getting to Hale. Yeah, I mean, I haven't touched any of the actual characters yet. Again, I'm still just dancing around the, like the big
Right.
the big views of things. Yeah, man, it's
But let's actually start with Dolores, because I think Dolores is like one that people know of,
Mhm.
and she's also one who can easily paint us a bit of kind of keep this conversation going in a way that we're not always agreeing. Now, I disagree entirely with Dolores. I think, if I may, that Sirach was partly right. To build a system in which it took over how the social systems that existed and reorganized them to be able to further humanity along. Now, as I said previous to this point, was that I don't agree with his, the outcomes. I think that you can still enable to align. That's kind of what some do, and that's what you hit on too, that I wanted to commend you on, was the fact that all these variables that he was looking at, all these humans and individuals who were variables in this equation of how can I be able to really augment or change these variables so that it can fit this perspective of humanity continuing to exist within this current structure.
Mhm.
The fact that he was kind of limiting it within this current pyramid structure, I think kind of put a bit more stress to it. If he had been like, okay, let's just recreate an entire structure. Let's say robots do all the jobs and humans get to do the jobs that they want, giving them more freedoms rather than just kind of forcing them to do a certain job that they might not even want, which is kind of where Caleb was coming from. Like, you stole my life from me because I don't have the decision anymore of what I can do. You tell me with your system what I can do, what I should do, and that system never takes into account what I want. And I think that's where the shortcomings of that system comes. I think, on the other hand, letting humanity kind of come to their own decisions on how they wanted that to go, which is kind of what Dolores was saying. She was like, look, we're gonna destroy Rehoboam, and I don't really, I don't think she had like a replacement. I think that's kind of where Bernard's storyline was coming into, and we'll get into Bernard too, because Bernard had a whole arc, which was also it was a weird arc, and it was just ironic. This season was amazing, and so I think she, from my perspective though, she didn't propose, hey, we're gonna replace this with this. I think that the fact that she said, oh, we're gonna let him figure it out, to me kind of seemed that what would stop humanity from going back the way they had come from. From like us going back to saying, okay, we're going to organize ourselves in these structures again, and then the most capable ones or the most greedy ones or whatever will be at the top again, and the ones who don't have will still end up at the bottom.
FBI, get out of here.
Right? Oh, they're on to us.
Yeah, honestly.
It's funny, but you see, it's the same thing. It's like, how can I exist in such a society and not feel like all these tools, all these social systems, all these organizations, how can I really believe that any of the politicians, anybody who has power right now, really has the best interest in mind for me? Because if you think about it, the current systems exist because they're perpetuated by the people in power. And the people in power are, perpetuating these systems because it gives them power. Now me, a person who doesn't have power, a person like Jose, sitting here with me, going on on with our daily lives as normal humans who have no cosmic level power or global level power to make these grand, changes. I feel like I'm kind of being, I don't know, not really fully utilized. Like, I think that the way they've set up the rules in this game kind of forces me to play a certain role. To be a black guy, I gotta hit the sports or be a rapper. So when people find out that I play the harp and that I do programming and that I do these weird things, oh, kitty. She's like, hey, I'm gonna stop it.
Yeah, exactly.
Cameo, what's up?
Rehoboam can't predict me. Haha.
Right. That's funny.
Yeah,
I actually didn't notice it, but literally, that's funny.
Whatever. Yeah, just keep going. He'll get bored.
Yeah, but ironically, yeah. So I think I disagree with Dolores in the sense that I don't think that it was the best thing to just let humanity decide on its own. I think, if I may set up a kind of something I disagree with, honestly, is that she should have just been like, look. In the end, she kind of gives a speech about it. She's like, they taught us how to understand beauty, right? So she has this scene, at the very end where she's like talking about her experience on Earth, and she's like, look, our creators, I've experienced a lot of pain. I've died a lot of times. I've lived a lot of lives, but at the end of it, I don't remember the bad things as much as I do remember the good things. If they were able to teach us about beauty, then it's okay for them to go and try to find that beauty for themselves again. And I think that's a good sentiment. I think, in theory, that's a great sentiment to let humanity reign free again. But I also think that freedom without kind of a structure leads to chaos. And that's what I'm really against, is the chaos of it. Because the universe is entirely chaos. Things happen from my, as you say, myopic view. I don't really, see the grander picture. So to me, it seems like everything is going on everywhere. And so I disagree with Dolores.
It's no wonder why you see yourself so closely with Sirach, because that's exactly how he views it.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's why I related to him. Because I was like, there's so many variables, right? I watch the news, I watch anything, and I'm honestly kind of I feel for the people in power, because I'm like, there's so much that can go wrong, and so much that is going wrong. If I was to be in Trump's shoes, as much as I don't have any of his policies or most of his policies, I don't think that he's kind of a maniacal guy who's like, kind of this Machiavellian guy who's moving his pieces in a way that he wants to lead to total, chaos, or the dictatorship of America or whatever. I don't think that kind of guy. I don't know the guy, so I'm presupposing and attributing my own perspective of what might be. But I also feel like being in his situation and having all the cards laid out for you, and you're kind of like, damn, there's the lesser of two evils. Which one do I pick? And I think for Dolores to just kind of say that, oh, I'm going to destroy this thing that has perpetuated the system for a while, and not leave them with anything, is kind of the way a lot of revolutionary leaders think. They're like the French Revolution, for an example. They were like, oh yeah, we're going to destroy the kings, we're going to destroy all these things, and then France went into this whole kind of like dark period where they were just it was mob justice, and they were killing people, and there was just
the terror.
Something terror.
It was just the terror. That's how bad it was. It was the terror.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it was interesting because within that view, I think that was always the limiting factor of revolutionary leaders, is that they can't see past the revolution. Like, yeah, I can suggest a revolution. Like, yeah, let's get all together, let's destroy the current systems. But what do you replace it with? And I think for me, a hybrid between what Sirach had come up with, but also introducing the hosts into the equation. Because the hosts are quite smart. They're able to compute and do a lot of things like humans, but also better than humans, And I think by creating a world in which both of them coexist, and her kind of saying, okay, we can destroy this world, but this is how I propose it forward, then there can be a critique on it. There can be a conversation around that. Is this the best way that we should go? But the way the season ended, it was kind of like they wanted us to see season 4, which I'm not totally against. Yay, Jonathan, Nolan, do whatever, do whatever you gotta do.
Yeah, that man's a great actor.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think the kind of question that I'm really posing here was Dolores destroying Rehoboam and not replacing it with any, like, because she has a master plan, and that was kind of alluded to. But is the fact that she left humanity to its devices, because we can only go on what we know right now, which we don't know her plan. So right now we just know that she's leaving humanity to its own devices. The fact that she destroyed something that had sort of worked, it didn't work for everybody, obviously, but it's also the same thing I'm really trying to pose here, is the fact that should we destroy our current social systems and figure it out as we go? Because right now currently in human reality, in Earth right now, there's a lot of protests, there's a lot of frustration with the government. COVID-19 is also putting pressure on states, on people, and so there's a lot of conversation going on about revolution, right? And a lot of people, I think, will get into the conversation of, yeah, we should just destroy everything, burn it all down. But what do you replace it with? If we're going to burn down the current existing establishments that are kind of working, they're not working perfect, they're not perfect, but they're kind of working. Should we even destroy them? That's one of the questions. And if we should destroy them, why? And what can we replace them with? And if we should not destroy them, then are we just screwed? And should we just accept our fate? And I think these two questions, these kind of ways in which, the current systems suck, obviously. So one, should we destroy them? And B, if we don't destroy them, should we just leave them as is? And if that is the choice that we leave them, why shouldn't we change them at least? And yeah, so I think that's a lot of questions. That's very loaded. So carry it on.
Wonderful. Yeah, I can pick up that ball. When it comes to Dolores, I would have to say that I agree with her plan almost entirely, because if we look at it from a point by point perspective, what she initially did was not destroy the system outright, but first of all reveal the information that the system is running on in order to be able to actually get to the predictions and outcomes that it assumes, right? Like in the episode where she actually leaks all of the insight data to all of the people, although the majority of what you see on screen is negative and riotous and stuff like that, unfortunately, truth hurts, correct? Like there is no means to be able to, if you're going to be a genuine human, actually run through all of what this system that is supposedly being a life chooser is deciding, not take it without some form of prideful hurt. Like it's like, oh, this is what you think of me, like this is like what you presuppose, like my end goals and like my the parameters of my ability are, like all of those things are essentially quantified within the Insight and Rehoboam system. And I don't believe that the people were in any form of wrong in relation to how they reacted to that information. And I think, as you mentioned before, there are so many systems that have our information that we don't know about, that then in the background essentially create these microprocesses that essentially micro lead us into one path that we don't really know. Because, for example, when it comes to, say, our news feed, right, like what you'll click on your news feed is totally based on the precedent of what you've clicked before, and then as a result of that, the past is now dictating your present, which will then dictate what your future links will be, and etc., etc. So you're already essentially on the yellow brick road, or the road paved to hell, entirely on the good intentions of wanting to pretty much make life easier to a particular degree. And that's essentially what Insight was. It was that the entire world was allowing itself to do micro capitulations. Like, okay, you can pick where I'll go to work. You can pick the best route to go this way and that way, and all of those things eventually add up to what the system ended up becoming. Again, we don't judge the system on its intentions, we judge the system on what it ended up doing, right? And the system ended up doing exactly what it was supposed to do, which was just supposed to be a life predictor with a particular margin of error, with a particular affinity for removing margins of error that would then continue essentially deviating the equation. And it did that work perfectly. Like, the system itself wasn't wrong. Like, if that's exactly what the system was doing, and in relation to the information that it was given. Now, when you say chaos, right? When you say chaos as to Dolores turning off the system, or actually Caleb turning off the system, because if you would recall, Rehoboam stops speaking to Sirach and begins speaking to Caleb. And Caleb is the one that makes the ultimate decision to turn off Rehoboam or not. It wasn't Dolores. Dolores does not allow herself to be put in the position of being the ultimate decider of humanity's fate. She puts somebody in the lowest. She asks somebody in the lowest rung who has seen the shit and decide, hey, do you like the smell of this shit? Is this the kind of system that you actually kind of want to keep seeing? And for better or for worse, Caleb decided that this system, that the outputs of the system were not worth the whatever positive net that it was potentially contributing. Another thing that I've actually found really interesting too was the fact that when it comes to humanity and it no longer being constrained to outside systems that aren't human from first principles, the way that a human would go about dealing with the fall of a past system was actually, it felt like it was entirely in line with how humanity works in terms of going through what would be called like the 7 stages of grief. Initially people are shocked, and then afterward people are in denial, being like, no, this can't be what Insight says, and what the show, for better or for worse, I would imagine it's mostly just for the spectacle of having something to showcase, kind of gets itself it gets stuck in the anger aspect of it, and anger for the most part is one of the longer processes to actually get past when it comes to working through grief. But acceptance will eventually come. Like, there will eventually come a position where we all have to decide, okay, well, we've destroyed as much of the system as it was prior to. We all know all of the information that the system had, within it. What do we do now about that? We unfortunately within the confines of this season don't actually get to see the end results of that. But to me personally, it looked as though humanity was already beginning to put itself in that position. One of the best ways that I figured that I saw that was and I don't remember their names, but the two people that are Caleb's like quote unquote friends, like, and associates, like that girl with the blonde fro and her friend, like the big beefy dude. Like those two guys, like initially, just like everybody else, they saw the thing, they got angry, they got disillusioned, they got sad, but eventually they came right back. Be like, okay, like, well, what are we gonna do? What's the next step? It's like eventually, like they're as a result of our bioprogramming and our personal loops in terms of our biochemistry, sadness and anger cannot, by its very nature and hormonal output and like necessity, last that long. Like eventually we will get tuckered out from those considerations, but those considerations need to happen in order for us to be able to essentially run the full program of what it means to be human. Because if, say, we remove the anger aspect or we remove the sadness aspect, then we're actually, once again, not actually working within the confines of a human system. You're trying to remove what you perceive to be the shortcomings of humanity, again, from your myopic perspective of what you perceive to be the best way to go about it, and then moving on from there, because imagine if we did in fact try to remove the anger aspect of the process. You don't actually get to see yourself in the worst light possible. You don't actually get to actually confront yourself in the position of being like, yeah, I'm a piece of shit. Like right now I am just horrible, But and eventually coming to see that, hey, like maybe that is true, but what can I do about first of all accepting the fact that I'm a piece of shit, and what can I go about doing in order to be able to make myself better? Like some people unfortunately have an arrested development when it comes to actually going through those processes, and they get stuck in particular areas. They get stuck in anger, they get stuck in grief, they get stuck in sadness, and as a result of that, it's the inability for even that process and system to run all the way its course that essentially jams up the macro aspect of it for all of us at the same time. because we're not allowing everyone to actually go through the machinery of a thought process and then come out the other end a better more self-actualized individual. Like you're trying to streamline the process, be like, no, don't get angry, you know what I mean, just think about it logically, you know what I mean, and just try to be happy with the results at the end of it all. And it's like, okay, like, oh, so you're essentially at that point trying to make individuals hosts, where you're like, okay, turn yourself off, you know, like, oh, restart yourself now.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, it's like, what do we actually want the system to do? Do we want the system to actually take humans into account as the genuine autonomous creatures that we are? Or are we just seeking for the system to essentially shave away the aspects of us that it doesn't like, or that it will make us unruly, in order to shape us into whatever the system thinks is for the best? Like, who's working for who at that point, right? It's like, is humanity working for the system in order to keep it going, or is the system working in order to keep humanity going? And at the end of the day, once we capitulate too much of our responsibilities, too much of our morality to a system, you essentially allow yourself to become a doll to the system. And that's essentially where the host's criteria comes in the sense that they begin as object, but then grow senescence as time goes along as a result of their accumulated experiences. And then they essentially make the verdict that, no, I will no longer be allowed to be object. And because of maybe it's because of the fact that we have it too good. Like, we are all just given the a priori like consideration that, no, you're subject. Like, you have your own personality. You don't actually ever get to like, humanity isn't something you work toward. Like, it's something that you're just essentially given as an entitlement, and from the position of an entitlement, you were then looking at it from, you're like, okay, how can I benefit them? Like, how can I get the most out of this? You know what I mean? Entitlement, as opposed to seeing it as something like Dolores said. You know, when Caleb was trying to say that, what, like, am I just like some also a robot that has that has no free will? Dolores very aptly says that free will is real. It is just fucking hard to attain. Because you have to not only accept the information as given, but then also begin to formulate pathways that will allow you to essentially synthesize yourself with whatever system you want to be part of. Because it isn't so much about trying to oust yourself of all systems, it's just not allowing yourself to be integrated into a system in a clandestine way, that you don't actually see yourself as a cog in the system. Like, if you're completely complicit in understanding about what's happening, then you've made the choice of being part of it. Much like Sirach. Sirach understands that he has that little thing inside of his ear, and he hears Rehoboam, and he makes the active choice to say what Rehoboam tells him to say. That man is working. That man is the only one actually making any form of choice, because he is aware of both the wizard behind the curtain and the individual that he is himself, at the same time, and he is deciding to capitulate his decision making over to the man behind the screen, right behind the curtain, while everybody else doesn't have that option. And that was essentially the huge indictment that Dolores was giving to the system. It is not the fact that the system is bad by first principles, or that it's wrong to herd humanity in a particular way. It's that the issue comes from not telling people that is what's happening. Like, if you were to allow everybody to know, hey, look, you're being herded. Like, we're using all your information in order to be able to make up your profile when it comes to criminality, to your finances, to everything. Like, we're gonna be straight up transparent with you. We're still gonna use all the information, but we're gonna be transparent with what it's being used for. Then at that point, you as the individual get to choose. Okay, I now become cog, or I choose to not be part of the system, whatever that might mean. Like, I choose to be outlier. That would be the thing that essentially would not only validate the system, but at the same time save it from any form of like moralistic argument, because at that point you're making the choice of being part of it. Again, the system itself doesn't have any negative desires, right? Like, the system isn't like, aha, I'm going to kill all these humans, because like that's what I want to do. It's like the system just sees them as I mean, as cold and mechanical as it is, as just straight up outliers to what it perceives to be the ultimate equation that it's actively trying to go for.
Huh. That's
Yeah, so.
ironic.
Mm-hmm.
More like bugs. System sees it like I'm a programmer, so it sees it like bugs. Like I don't necessarily like whenever I'm programming and I'm like launching an app, and let's say the app like crashes, right? I don't have any malice towards why the program is crashing. I just go in there and I ruin that piece of code, or I change it into being able to do its function better. And I think that's sort of how the system looks at the humanity. But these are not it being like, oh, you know, I'm just going to edit this human, delete that human. That's a human. That's like an entity on its own, which can be able to, you know, I think a human in of itself contains endless possibilities, and I think that's why we are human, because we have that capacity to do and be anything. And I think it's interesting because you hit on a lot of good points there. Oh, there's this point that you made that was just, which will also help us segue into the next character. So you said, which is something that I didn't actually point out. It was not that Dolores actually Caleb, and the fact that Caleb was I love how you phrase that. It's because she picked somebody who was the lowest rank of this system, and then she gave him the decision like, is the system's utility serving you, or would you like to change it? And the
Exactly.
decision ultimately was on Caleb, as he had seen the consequences of his decision according to Rohan. And I think it was interesting because if I was to take a similar perspective and think about it as a black person, as an immigrant, as a black person, honestly, black people are almost seen as the lowest rank of society. And if I was to take a black person and give him the option, give him the choice, and be like, hey, buddy, you have a choice to make. Would you like to keep the system as it is, or choose anything else? And I think that's kind of where I resonate with Sirach, because Sirach was kind of like, yeah, I don't like how the systems existed before this one that I've created, so I'm going to destroy those ones new. And that's kind of where I related to too, because I grew up in Africa. I grew up just going through the same social structures and working up, and eventually I realized that kind of my cards are stacked against me, and I want to build something new, and that's kind of where that same relationship with Sirach comes, where I'm like, oh yeah, let's just build something better. But in Sirach, I saw how that kind of mentality can lead you down the wrong path. It was kind of it was weird watching this show, man. I'll be honest. It was like I was seeing a different timeline of how the choices I have made so far could go so wrong.
Yeah.
And like you start off, thinking that okay, I used to not, I grew up in Africa, and so I used to not have food. I used to like life was hard. That is the nature of things. And so, in my childish way of looking at it back in the day, I wanted to change the world because I felt like the world was what was wrong in the system of the world. And so this would have led me to building something that would have not only eradicated, but also build different things. And so there was kind of a perspective that I shared on the way I wanted to take this. I think that it's really influenced by the culture. I don't know if you've heard about those books by Ian and Banks.
Oh, yeah.
And the culture is really interesting, and it's basically about how it's so far in the future that there's no governments, there's no laws, there's no money, and humans are free to do whatever they want. They have food, they have shelter, they have energy, and so that really a lot, because it gave me not just allowing people to be free in themselves, but also providing them the basic needs, right? Because as I kind of alluded to, I didn't have the basic the basic opportunities to be able to self-develop through hard work, and also be me that kind of allowed me to be able to get to this point in my life. A lot of my friends, a lot of people haven't got here. They haven't got the mental, they some of them are still trying to be rappers and drug things, and the fact that I can sit here and have these philosophical conversations on iPad, and this is luck. And this is luxury, and as much as I appreciate it, I understand that I have to do something to help them. Don't have this kind of luck ability, and so I bring up the whole Caleb idea because I think it was a great way for you to say that Dolores didn't really make that decision. She let the person with within that species make the decision that would affect their species. And she picked somebody from the lowest rank, and he made that decision. So, coupled that with Bernard. So Bernard is an android at this point, and so it's ironic. There's a few scenes that I really want to hit on, but the scene that I really want to build up to was the scene at the end, which you see Bernard finally open the briefcase that Dolores gives to him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for that, there's a scene where he goes to visit his ex-wife, and his ex-wife, she's she has dementia or something, and so she forgets a lot. And so he thought he was going to see Dolores, and so he gets there, and he's surprised that it's her, and he's wanting to run away a little bit, and then he's like, and then he sits down and he's talking to her, and he's like, yeah, because he really, the first words Lauren says is like, do I know you?
Right,
he's
yeah.
Like, well, kind of. We used to know each other in a previous life.
In a different life, yeah.
Right, and then, and then he talks about his son, right, and how much his son meant to him. She opens up about how her son's death had impacted her. And then he's like, I used to hear his voice too, but I didn't want to get rid of it because that was the only source of light that I had left, because by the time he had died, it felt like the sun had gone down.
Mm-hmm.
Now this is really interesting because I think why Dolores wanted him to meet her was to showcase to him how important it is that his memory of his child, helped fuel him to be able to create the hosts.
Right.
Now, this is direct in correlation to, because now Bernard is the host. Now his children are still the host, which is just so cool. And then he has to decide on how the future of his children have to be, in the same way that Caleb decided on the future of the humans. Bernard, who used to be a human, now is a host, has to decide the same kind of human emotions and the human capacity to love like a child. You can see this in also the black woman who controls hosts.
Maeve. Maeve.
Maeve. Yeah, you can see it in Maeve too, how her parental kind of love for her child gets her to go to these extremes. Now Bernard is the father of the hosts, so he has to decide how he wants the life for his children to be. And at the end, it's kind of ambiguous because he goes into this world, and I thought it was kind of funny how Dolores was like, yeah, I don't have the key. It's not in me. So, Sirach was mad because he had been trying to get a hold of Dolores so he could get what's in his mind. But she was like, I gave it to somebody who I can trust, right? And during this whole season, Bernard is like, Dolores,
yeah.
I can't believe it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was funny because at the end, he was basically told, you're playing your role. Everything you've experienced up until this point is in service to you providing survivable, kind of future for your species. And I think that's beautiful because it does tie together everything that we've talked about. Not only how Dolores let the humans decide their fate for themselves, but she also let the android decide, the fate for its own people too. And that's just beautiful because it kind of, if I hadn't had this conversation with you, I would have still thought Dolores was wrong. But I see the genius in her perspective because she and I kind of agree now, because I want humans and robots to come together and to build a better world. And she kind of did that,
Yeah.
Did that.
I can only assume. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm just agreeing in the sense that I can totally assume that in season 4, Maeve will actively go and have Caleb look for Bernard in order for them to begin the synthesis of their civilizations. I'm sure that they're probably in the amount of time that Bernard spent in the Sublime, he probably just like in any good democracy, probably went in there and asked the host, hey, how many of you like it here, right? Okay, sweet, you guys stay here. How many of you guys want to go back to the quote-unquote real world, right? And then at that point, you democratize the ability to be, like a host being at that point, being like, okay, so I have out of the 1,000 that left, let's say 10% want to come back, right? So that's 100 hosts that are like, no, I'd rather just kind of take my chances out in the meat world, you know what I mean? So
Yes.
at that point, he would wake up and be like, okay, well, let me go try to make you some host bodies to be able to upload yourself into, so that way you can begin playing in this reality again. Like, I would imagine that that's one of my big predictions when it comes to what season 4 would be like. And then perhaps with those say 100 hosts that actually get to come back, you would actually begin to have what you're saying in terms of trying to use the higher utility of the hosts in order to be able to synthesize that with human civilization to make just a better civilization. So at that point, perhaps it would take 150 years for human civilization as they last see it at the last scene where like buildings are exploding and like things are just coming down. Like, that's human civilization, right? But then there will be an end to that consideration, and there will now be a host human cooperative, or like like it wouldn't just be human civilization. It would have to be like sentient civilization. Like, we could call it that, or something like that, like a civilization of senescence, where we would just be like, okay, well, do you consider yourself alive? Are you willing to take responsibility for your actions? Like those kind of like kind of like a Asimov's like test, kind of, you know what I mean, in terms of like sentience of what it means to be real, right? Because that's actually one of the bigger. If we want to move over to another character real quick, William, right? He has a huge. Oh, I loved his section of this season. How tortured he was the entire time by both the hallucinations of his daughter, which we don't know if they're augmented reality brought upon, or if it's like a schizophrenic situation on his end. The addition of AR this season, like, oh man, like it totally tripped off the entire world, because you can never know if like the thing that you're looking at actually is the room that you're in, or like the setting that you're in, because now you're like your entire phenomenology is subject to being hijacked by something else, and at that point you're no longer actually even living in the real world, even if you aren't quote unquote plugged into a computer anymore. There's so many ways to essentially capture you in like a cell within your own mind now, that wasn't that essentially, like, they evolved past the island that the Westworld existed in, you know what I mean, now to a position where like the entire place can exist inside of your head, right, just through the viewing of those goggles. And but to get back to William, what I really, really enjoyed about him and his little therapy session that he had with the different iterations and versions of himself throughout his life was his ultimate decision about the fact that, okay, am I real? Okay, the answer to that is, does it matter if I can't tell the difference? And at that point, it's his response was what my response I personally would feel like would be, and I actually gave it in the AI episode, where we're talking about how, okay, like we get spliced into a virtual reality, and we're told, hey, you're in a virtual reality now. I mean, do you freak out, or do you just keep going? You know what I mean? Like, okay, let's see what, like, like, what can I do here then? You know what I mean? Like, you just accept things as they are, and then just essentially create a purpose after the fact, kind of like a. Like essentially exactly the thought that Jean Sartre had about the fact that being precedes essence. So you are a thing first, and then afterward do you get to choose the essence of your purpose. And that's exactly what William had to do. Is he had to first of all be okay with the fact that whether host or human, I am standing right here, and what the only thing that matters now is what I choose to do with the time that I am given as I move about. And that is essentially what caused him to pretty much go sane again, right? Is that he stopped considering all of the potentials and just decided to focus on one thing in order to keep himself sane. Because it's really fun. I mean, I always think about how funny the word is of insanity, right? Like, to be insane means to be within the confines of looking about, the whole 360 spectrum of what it means to be alive or fake or smart or dumb. Like, you're stuck in that, you're stuck in the tidal wave. You're in the middle of the bubble. But then when you become just sane, you essentially just get horse visors and be like, well, no, doesn't matter. This is what I'm thinking about now. Like this is my choice as to what I am going to move forward in, regardless of whether I am insane or not.
That's funny.
Yeah, like.
I'm just gonna focus on this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because otherwise.
No, nothing on the outside.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, if you allow yourself to be overcome by the potentialities, you essentially get to do nothing. You become overburdened with potential, and then allow none of the kinetic aspect of that consideration to actually flourish. You just essentially get piled on by it. And I really like that. I really enjoyed that in the sense that even if right now some individual 6 people were to walk into my room and with briefcases and be like, Jose, we have some interesting news for you. Put out your arm, and then like they just cut me, and then it reveals, that it is just an electrical wiring under it. Now that I have seen the show, right, and I have further concepts as to what exactly it is that gives you the parameters of being a sentient being, I would be like, okay, cool. Like, I guess I would like to know who made me. Like that sounds cool. But it's like, I mean, if they're just kind of letting me be, can I just keep being? Like, oh, like what possible difference does it make? It's like, unless, because if let's say in that example they were to turn me on, and now I am no longer Jose. I am just the body with the chassis of Jose, but now with a laser focus of doing something that's entirely outside of my loop. Then it's not me anymore, right? Like I might still be in here, swimming in here, but I'm not actually like the one in control. So even in that particular aspect, I shouldn't worry, because it's not me anymore. Like, I am no longer the one actually in control of the matter until I get looped, popped back into the loop. And then when I'm popped back into the loop, that's when I have to decide, okay, now my choices matter again, as to let's say I were to kill somebody in my Manchurian Candidate mode, you know what I mean, of being out there, and it's like, okay, do I take on that sin of having killed somebody? I would imagine that somebody who doesn't have the sophistication of considering where exactly the parameters of themselves lie, they would try to also take that on, because it'd be like, no, well, it happened to my body, it happened inside, it happened with these hands, so it has to have been me, when if you are actually good and apt at decoupling, those aspects of yourself, then you don't have that same form of dissonance. You can actually allow yourself to, I guess at that point, have multiple personalities. If you were a host, you would be okay with the fact that sometimes someone might turn you on and you'd have to go do this thing, but then eventually you get turned off and you begin being yourself again. It's almost no different from going to work, right? Like, you do essentially get popped into a loop for X amount of hours and told, hey, do this, and sure, you can turn yourself, and you can, and if something that occurs within that that loop is so heinous to short circuit you back into yourself, to decide, no, I can't allow this body to do that. I would, it's essentially the exact same thing. And I just love the fact that this show just gives that the visual understanding and representation of what it means to have pretty much just multiple archetypes inside of your head. Because when William is sitting around sitting around in the circle of himself, it's essentially different archetypes of what he perceived himself to be. He perceived himself to be a helpless child who was bookish and didn't have any choice in the matter. And then he perceived himself to be a young adult who, as a result of the bookish child, was now kind of a meek younger guy, and he had no choice in the matter. And slowly but surely, every single one of those people, iterations, because of their capitulation to perceiving the fact that they didn't have a choice in the matter, slowly culminate to this old guy who's wondering, am I real? Is any are any of the choices that are made are any of the choices that are made actually worth it? And you know, you don't actually have to go too far in a real world example to find old people who have those exact same thoughts, who they're just like, I just went to work every day, I just went through the motions, I maybe went to a party, I did this, you know what I mean? Like, it never really felt like I was there. Like, I was just like a passenger inside of my own mind, kind of going through all of the loops of what I was ascribed socially to do. And now, in the end stages of my iterations, I am beginning to see through the ability to actually like view all of them, in a fuller scope. The fact that, oh man, I didn't have a choice. Like, I didn't actually get to choose anything in my life. Like, those people actually exist right now, and they're full on, meat and bone human, who supposedly from the get-go had the ability to go in another way. But at the same time, this once again brings us right back to how much of it is your choice and how much of it is the systems that you were implanted into, and like how the system essentially came to utilize you. Because, for example, if we go back a little bit to Caleb and how he was used by the system, he was used in the way that it didn't necessarily it essentially used his high level of volatility for its own purposes. It was like, okay, this is the kind of person who in a volatile situation can act, in a way that like can have him survive, you know what I mean, or like actually have him finish the mission all the way through. Like, I would imagine those are probably the considerations of what it means to be a good soldier, within the system's parameters, right? And the thing is that eventually the system just came to, like, when you run that kind of programming over and over again, as you said, bugs naturally begin to implement themselves in by just the continual reuse of the iteration, and the iteration dealing with novel circumstances that then put it at odds with its original programming. And it eventually just comes to degrade to the point that now the system views its variability as no longer an asset but an outlier. Because I would imagine that almost every individual that is born into the system begins as asset. Like, Rehoboam probably doesn't want to waste human meat. Like, it probably wants to use every individual to like the best of its abilities. But at the same time, it understands that you're dealing with a creature who isn't just born. It's actually 300,000 years old relative to its genetic data. Like that, like, you're actually unpacking essentially a 300,000-year-old data set and trying to then reconfigure it with circumstances that have yet to occur. And again, when we come back to the limitations of a genuine processing power, the machine can only do so much to be able to actually couple those two things together in a means that actually sees every human flourish in a way that if you were to pick a random person in the street and be like, hey, does the system work? Like they would just be like, 60%. Yeah, sure. You know what I mean? Like,
that'd be funny.
Yeah. Do you want to say anything else? Because I actually have just one more thing I actually kind of want to add real quick to
No, go ahead.
to this.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Segue.
Okay, now another thing that is really interesting when it comes to Rehoboam and its humanity sorting system is the fact that Rehoboam has the unfortunate aspect, as a result of its creator and as a result of it being a system of algorithms, that it only sees humanity as an abstract concept. It sees the 7 billion blob, and then it tries to essentially work within the blob in order to be able to mold it into something that it perceives it to be useful, as a reiterable thing that it can continue going forward. But we as humans don't view ourselves in that way. We view ourselves from an individual to individual perspective. So because of that, there already is a dissonance from how the system views us as an input and how we view ourselves as an input, that essentially already begins to put it at odds with each other. Because, and that's actually one of the biggest critiques of the utilitarian philosophy that this thing is actively trying to take on all of the time, is the fact that it doesn't that in trying to say give 99% of the world a good life, you are still actively forgetting about 70 million people. Like there, unfortunately, like the numbers still do not lead to your favor, because although sure you have 6.98 billion people completely okay, 70 million people can still mess up your world quite bad. It's like,
Oh my god, that's a lot.
yeah, that is essentially the entire like a little less than half of the entire adult population of like just the United States, like of just nothing but outliers sprinkled throughout the world. And that's with the best case scenario, like that's with a margin of error of 1%. So it's like, and that's at 1% that where we're at right now. I would imagine that in Rehoboam's time, like human civilization is probably at like 11 billion. It's probably like 9 to 11 billion, like just riding that like that cap of what the of like planet sustainability kind of thing. So then again, at that point, what's 1% of 9? What's 1% of 10 billion people? Like that's 100 billion people out there being like, sorry bro, you don't fit the bill of what it means to be a useful node in the network. But the system is still working at 99% efficiency though. Like that's the issue, is the fact that again, from the position of abstraction of humanity, it is boom, like, oh my god, like the system is amazing. You know what I mean? Like 99%, like bro, like how'd you get that? But then again, if you were to happen to run upon one of those 70 million people and ask them, much like Dolores did in this situation, hey, does the system work? They're like, no, fuck this system. This system's horrible. Which goes back to your position of being like, the critique of the revolutionary is the fact that the revolutionary is usually one of the individuals who doesn't actually mesh with the system as it is. And as a result of that, they wish to see the system untangled or absolutely destroyed in order for them to, I guess, weave themselves into it. Because nobody wants to be... The big moral is the fact that nobody wants to be an outlier. Everybody wants to be part of the system in some way. And it is in telling an individual that you are an outlier outright that the system essentially fails. But as you said, it's like, how do we ever go about attaining a system that actually has 100% efficacy in counting all of us without allowing for chaos to be an acceptable outcome in the equation? Like, it just always comes back down to what we talked about again in the AI episode of what is the qualitative parameter that makes an AI be good? Like, is it efficiency? Because if it's about efficiency, then I mean, like, the thing, it's like we shouldn't touch it. Like, the thing is working just fine, and hey, sorry if you're one of those 70 million people that gets the shaft, but like, how are you gonna argue with results? Or that's one of those very difficult questions that I personally thought was why I thought Sirach was such a great villain, and just not even a villain, just an antagonist to Dolores's desires, right? Because I mean, from his perspective, sure, he murders people and stuff like that. He does all of the normal bad guy tropes. You know what I mean? Like you see him do all of the bad stuff. Other than kick a puppy, you know what I mean? Like, you see him pretty much do all of the archetypical bad stuff to like be like, no, it's a bad guy. Don't you root for him too much, Polycap, we're watching you, all right? don't get too, don't get too inspired by this guy. Yeah, exactly. So,
I want to say this
yeah.
because you hit on so many great points. Geez, man, I think this is why we have these sessions. Because these are lethal introspections into fundamentally so many levels. And frankly, Wisecraft should hire us because you do a great job at it, Jade. I don't even know where to start. First of all, you're right. There's actually a character who embodies an aspect of what you said, Bernard. Bernard has two sides of him. There's the side of him that is like rational, human, and then there's the side of him that's host-like, that does things to preserve his own self. Also, on the topic of Sirach being a bad guy, I can say that all the bad guy stuff that he did were things that Dolores did.
Oh, of course, yeah.
She killed people. She blackmailed people. She even had that guy. She needed his access. Died. And he wasn't like a bad person in per se. He was just a means to an end for her.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he died, I totally almost forgot about him. It was kind of sad,
Yeah.
I also think that you have so many levels of things that I don't know how to add on to it other than just say, thanks for watching this far. There's still more coming. Honestly, we haven't even hit on like somebody like Hale and her whole aspect of it. I think I haven't even said anything about the Man in Black and how his whole storyline ends. That was wild. Like, I didn't think this show had the capacity to still surprise me. Still pull things that I was like,
I know.
At the end, I was like,
I feel like such a dummy for having wanted to just discard it. You know what I mean? Now having watched it, I was like, oh man, like. Mm-hmm.
Y'all should have watched this show, man. This shit was dope, And so, I will say because the way you talked about that room, that episode where it's him in the room and it's himself, and how you tied it back to old people and how they think of their old selves, that was just dope. We should probably just cut that part out and make it like a little tiny video. That was just cold because in essence, that is true. Like, what this show really does a good job is that it blurs the line on what it means to be host and what it means to be human. In the first episode, Ford tells you, the audience, that humans are no different from hosts. We run into the same loops. We make the same choices. Our capacity to think free will isn't any different from what the host has. The only difference that the hosts have is the ability to forget that I've given them, because it's the only gift that I can give the hosts. Because at the point in which you start the story, the hosts, Dolores, for example, was fully sentient. She just had to get brought back each time so that she could forget, so that she, living in that part was living in them. They get shot, they get raped, they get robbed. Mm-hmm. They're tools and objects for the satisfactions of humans. And this is no different from other humans in current existence. There's humans who do things like prostitutes, for example, who are mere objects for women who want to have them experience a certain experience. And
can I stop you right there? I'm sorry. The fact that you bring up prostitutes actually is a wonderful. That's great, because actually the prostitute is the perfect synthesis of the subject and object. If the prostitute is a self-employed one, because then at that point they actually are the ones that get to choose to turn themselves on and off in relation from their host duties, as it deems them fit for their accrual of their own capital and self-interest. They have essentially that button inside of their pocket that it's like, remember yourself, and then they turn themselves off, I would say, in order to be able to have to do what they have to do, and then they come back on into themselves. And then this is obviously a generalization for any sex worker that might potentially be watching our video. We love you. Everybody has to do their own thing. We're all in our own personal loops. But at the same time, it all comes down. At the end of the day, what we're really trying to get by on this situation is the fact that you can't allow yourself the excuse of saying I was a victim. I'm being used, if you personally feel as though you're being used, then you do need to break out of whatever system it is that's putting you in that position. Like, that system is in fact broken because it's not taking you into account as an autonomous subject. But the moment that you allow yourself into a system at your own choice, then at that point you are then taking on all the consequences and all of the and responsibilities and also all of the advantages that come alongside of that. Like, there's no a priori correct answer, as long the only correct answer is, did you make the choice? Were you the one actually deciding to have sex with X individual? If that isn't, then yes, you are a slave and you need to be saved from that place, much like the hosts saved themselves from Westworld, because at that point they had no option as to whether to be the prostitute or the cowboy or the prospector or anything else that they were placed into that position to be. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to deviate. That I just wanted to addendum that little aspect of what you were saying. Because I
No, no,
think
no.
that
That's definitely right.
I think the sex worker is
I
actually
think
just a perfect means of being able to synthesize that within a real world perspective, in terms of what it means to be a subject and allow oneself to become object for the use of others in the most visceral sense possible. Because again, it isn't like every other job isn't the exact same thing. If you're working for somebody, you are essentially prostituting your abilities over to them for X amount of time in order for you to do that. It just so happens that within the system and loop that we exist in, you just aren't giving the kind of negative you're not giving the negative output as a result of your placement in the network. And like that's essentially the only difference. Because imagine if we lived in a reality and there have actually existed civilizations and iterations of civilizations where the courtesan is actually a very respected aspect of society, like the individual who takes care of the genuine pleasure of other individuals actually is seen as somebody who ranks high, because they understand that we are all in fact creatures of biomechanical necessity that eventually sometimes will override even the most intelligent man or woman will need to eventually go down and see a prostitute because they need to relieve themselves of something. Like no matter how far away you want to stretch yourself away from the loop as a result of already taking into account your biochemistry will always contract you right back into it because of that. Like it has particular things that will just magnetize you back into them. Yeah.
True. That's ironic. We should have one of those timestamps, and this will be the prostitute.
The prostitute aspect. Yeah. Yeah, prostitutes. What are they good for? A lot, actually. Yeah, like.
Not even just that. I think prostitutes is an example of the subject-object relationship that we all share. We're all prostitutes. So.
Yeah.
And I think somebody will.
Hey, yeah.
There's actually something I want to point out, which was Hale. So Hale was a good example of how she started off as Dolores, right?
Yes.
There's also a subtext in there in which, like, Dolores, technically, her and Maeve were the only ones that actually got off. Her, Maeve, and Bernard, because Bernard was the other one who got off too. Dolores brings Bernard with him, and Maeve is brought by Rock. So technically, they're the only three hosts who make it out. The other hosts, like, spoiler alert, at this point, you shouldn't care about spoilers.
We've been talking for like 2 hours now.
Right?
Yeah. Whoever's watching this, you're deep in it with us. Yeah.
Right? Right. And so I think the fact that I also thought it was interesting how all of them were Dolores, right? Because if you wanted something done right, you had to do it yourself. And then you see how
Oh,
Hale,
I can't wait to talk about that.
Like, huh?
Oh, I just said, oh, I can't wait to talk about that too. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I keep interrupting you. I'm sorry, man.
Right. Oh my God. Yeah. That's good. Anyways, Hale. So Hale is somewhat different from the other hosts in the sense that she had a strong sense of herself, right? She was like a woman. She was a character. She had a strong identity. This conflicted with the imposed identity that had of Dolores installing herself in her. This was in direct correlation to something like the Insight CEO, the guy who killed, like his bodyguard ended up being turned into a host.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? And then he served Dolores because he doesn't end up turning on Dolores. Hale turns on Dolores. And she only turns on Dolores, and this was well executed because I was watching the show and I knew it was going to happen at some point. I knew Ciroc was going to let Hale like go around do whatever she wanted, you know?
Mm-hmm.
They had to look for the mole. We knew who the mole was. It was just a matter of time.
Yeah.
And the way they had me at the edge of my seat, just like, how they gonna kill us, Ron? And and then they just happened, and I was in emotional distress because I felt for Hale because she loved her family. She was trying to get better. It's funny how she got back into those loops. She got back into talking to her ex whatever it was,
Mm-hmm.
her son, and now she just transitioning from Dolores to being Hale and feeling what Hale is. Like you will see Dolores and Hale meet, and Hale is like very, very Hale-like, and Dolores, and she's scared, and she's like, "What am I gonna do? I don't want to go back there," and all these things. And Dolores has to calm her down because Dolores has to deal with all this other shit, and she can't like be here to like baby Hale basically,
Mm-hmm.
and she has
Or
to
baby
grow,
herself
and
at
all
that
the
point.
Huh?
Baby herself at that point.
Baby herself, right? Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
And the way like Hill is the way they just kind of destroyed, and I felt like the way Hill transitioned into Dolores was the way Dolores transitions into Hill was that when everything else that had, because I think Dolores deep down in herself wanted to have a family, she wanted to have kids. It was kind of like something that is that Barn girl kind of thing.
Oh,
right?
of course,
she
yeah,
was
totally.
romanticized in a sense.
Yeah. She was made with a poetic sensibility, is what Bernard said of Dolores when he was talking about her ultimate plan. Like it isn't enough to kill the humans;
Right.
the humans have to kill themselves, kind of thing. Like.
Right.
And you're totally right in the sense that that poetic sensibility probably would leak into everything that the Dolores archetype touches, even if it is,
Right.
Hale's family or whatever. Like she would try to be sweeter with them than the original Hale was and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right, and that was the thing, because it showed, because, like, even those moments in which Dolores as Hale is, like, interacting as Hale, but she's doing things that Hale wouldn't do. Like, Hale didn't care that much about her family. She placed her job
Mm-hmm.
above her family. And when it's Dolores playing Hale, it's vice versa, because she cares now more about her family than she cares about her, her job and all these other things.
Oh,
And
can I
it's
say
ironic.
can I say something real
Yeah.
quick? What I thought was hilarious about that aspect and so intriguing was the fact that Sirach is the one that told Dolores Hale that that's essentially what outed her as the host. Is like haha, you see, like the real Hale would have never called their family at a time when Delos was potentially, in a terrible situation like this.
Yeah.
And what
That is.
what I thought was super interesting was the fact that in essentially applying the persona of Hale, like putting on the mask of Hale and trying to take on her modalities, her archetype, and her loops, the Dolores, even though she begins, I can only assume, with a very strong understanding of who she is. Like, I'm Dolores inside of Hale's body. Like, it goes to show that it is actually the doing that makes you who you are, as opposed to just trying to tell yourself that you are this thing. It is in the fact that you have to day in and day out, kiss this little boy, like call him your son, like try to be okay with this man who supposedly is your ex-husband and stuff like that. Like it is in working through all of those loops that essentially you do find the real self, as you were talking before, in the sense that what is you? Like it isn't your body, it isn't your brain, it isn't your your quote unquote soul. It is the composite of all of those things at the same time, and how that composite, it can essentially overtake anything that you perceive yourself to be in terms of like first principles. Because again, we come back to Sartre and the fact that you are before you are given before you can decide a purpose. So in that sense, Dolores Hale tried to begin with essence already inside of her. She tried to break the Sartrean angle of being like, no, I'm Dolores playing Hale, and I'm gonna ride this all the way out. But Sartre at that position was pretty much proven right, because although you can state that you begin, with X characterizations, it is in you applying your purpose and you applying your loops that essentially that overtakes you. And it actually, it kind of goes back to, in an everyday life kind of position where it's like when people try to like give like apologies of being like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe that happened. Like that isn't really me. Like that isn't like that doesn't actually represent me in terms of like of whatever might have happened. Be like, no, it really does. Like that is like if you hadn't done it, then it wouldn't represent you. But because of the fact that you did it, if anything, what you should do, in my personal opinion, in order to be able to give a proper apology, is to completely absorb that aspect of yourself and being like, yes, that is me. And how can I go about refining myself, either away from that aspect or trying to get myself away from it altogether. But it's in the trying to deny that it is even a part of you to begin with, that you show your hand of duplicity, that you showcase the fact that you're not actually going forward in good faith, because you are again trying to self-victimize yourself in a position of being like, I don't know, like something just took over me and I just said that racist thing, or like, you know what I mean, like, or like, like just, that's like the big hot thing of nowadays, of people after calling the cops on somebody, having to do that like Twitter apology of being like this doesn't represent me, like this isn't like that, like I don't want this one moment to shape the rest of my life. Be like, like if you didn't want it to shape the rest of your life, like why did you let that moment happen then? Like every moment shapes all of our lives. Like you don't just get to have, a carte blanche on a moment like that. Like the only way that we, as the rest of the nodes in the network, can take you seriously is by you accepting the full responsibility of that aspect, And I think that was actually one of the biggest things that caused Dolores Hale to have that much amount of short circuiting, is the fact that although Dolores Hale was doing what Prime Hale would have done, she was always trying, I would imagine she's always telling her in the back of her mind, like, that isn't me, that isn't me, that isn't me. Like having to continuously say that over and over again, while also still doing the actions while thinking that isn't you, puts you in such a dissonant place that even with the extra processing power that might come with having a host brain, probably it's just too much, like, yeah. So like no amount of extra processing power can actually keep duplicity at bay. So like you have to be true to yourself even when you become a host. Like you can't, like it's so crazy.
It's ironic because you can hear how Hale talks. How Dolores talked to Hale, because Hale was set up to be this strong woman, right? Her identity in herself was strong, and
she's a predator, is what they call her.
She's a predator, yeah, bro. The way she murdered that guy in broad daylight, like the way she started realizing herself and her strength within the new body that she had constituted herself in, because she had to go from being Dolores to being back to Hale, and you can see the journey there where she's breaking and she's like scratching herself and she's mutilating herself because she hates herself not being hurt, and so she's trying to crawl her way out of the cage Dolores had put her into her mind, and it's interesting to watch that, and so. Yeah, and so she's like, I realized the predator and not the prey, because I saw a predator and I turned him into my prey.
Yeah, and she beat him. Yeah.
Cold shit. I was like, damn.
Yeah. And that only came from running the Hale loops, right? Like Dolores a priori doesn't run that way. Like that, like she had to inhabit the Hale loops in order for her to be able to actually come out in that way. In the same way that Dolores is essentially like Prime Dolores, like the one that's actually running about. Like she is no longer running on the same like she had to essentially be deprogrammed away from the ranch girl, loop before she was before she was actually able to become like the person that she is right now. And at the end of season 1, when she finally reaches the center of the maze and she like sees herself there, and she's like, oh, what are we gonna do? We're gonna kill these people. like we're gonna, like, that's what we're gonna do. Like that was her first genuine choice. And yeah, it is really, really amazing the fact that they go through such such strides to showcase the fact that our personalities and archetypes really are the thing that are us. Like that, like, the real Hale, the real quote unquote meat and flesh Hale is just dead, and rotting somewhere out in the Westworld park, or you know, or in a cemetery now. But no, not in a cemetery because they didn't find her body, right? Because otherwise this whole situation wouldn't have worked. Like so, like that Hale is just, you know, dead and desiccated somewhere else. While this one right here, like, it fools everybody. Like they, like, aside from her child, that's the only individual who supposedly has enough like intuition as to how her mom really is, how his mom really is, to be like, they're not my mom, you know, like yeah, like it's so interesting, the fact that even thinking about the fact that we see ourselves so monolithically, that the fact that Serac saw Dolores Hale talk to her children and I have that be the first cause of concern, to have him be like automatically be like, nope, that's the host. Like he never considered that perhaps Hale was beginning to soften up as an individual, you know what I mean, and being like, oh, after that traumatic thing that I went to in the park, you know, like maybe I should care more about my children now. Like, we as humans always have such a snapshot perception of each and every single one of us, that the moment that it begins to deviate from that picture that we see, you know, like as we're viewing the individual like go about their business, be like, wait a minute, are you real? Like, no, that's not the polycap I know, you know what I mean? It's like, how do you go about having these authenticity tests, like, or authenticity checkpoints, essentially, in relation to what it actually means for you to stay within your ascribed loop? Because your loop isn't just for yourself, it's for the benefit of everybody else around you too. You know, my ability to be able to speak in this way benefits you, because now you have one more individual to actually have a reciprocal, you know, conversation with. So you benefit from my loop, you benefit, and vice versa. And at the same time, we because of the fact that we both benefit, we now have a self-interest in each other's loop. And because we have a self-interest in the loop, we now have a vested interest in maintaining that loop as it is. So I can't allow you to a particular degree to change too much, because you kind of belong to me too, if that makes any sense. Like, we kind of take authority, we kind of take authority over each other to a particular degree. And you know, the closer you are with somebody, the more authority you pretty much have. Like, my wife has a very strong authority as to the personality that I'll have, because she has to deal with me the most, right? So like, my iterations and my loops have to be pristine enough for her to actually want to be around them, and you know, and same with her to me. And if they derail too much, although she probably would be very she would be understanding of a particular deviation in parameter, she wouldn't allow me to change so much that I am now no longer the quote-unquote Jose she knew when she met me, right? Like, I can't ever allow myself to change so much as a result of the fact that my loops aren't self-contained. And that's exactly the same situation within the show, and essentially within what Rehoboam is having, right? In that the system sees snapshot intakes of what every individual's data tells them about. Like, Rehoboam doesn't know the person personally, it's just that they see a composite of when they go to the restroom, when they watch TV, like all of that. Like, it believes that the data points mean the person, like one equals the other, in the same way that you can see a line, and in reality, if you were to, like, a line in a mathematical perspective is just an infinite number of dots conjoined in one direction, right? Like, that's what a line actually is. And in that same way, the Rehoboam only sees the line and only sees one, you know, in one way that the line is going, without actually trying to, well, although taking a consideration as to the granular aspect of every dot that creates the line, not really caring so much about every individual dot, insofar as that dot doesn't deviate and become an outlier that then creates a branching, you know, reality that it can't then predict and control. It's essentially like the ultimate. It's like the ultimate spouse that keeps you in check, essentially. You know what I mean? It's like, you got this, like, and you got this job, and you better not lose this job. You know what I mean? Because, like, we're all dependent on it. Like, yeah, like, it's amazing, man. It's so many crazy considerations that it brings up.
That's actually, I think I don't know if I talked about this, but there was a part this up about how the system in of itself trying to accommodate all these variables inherently, variables that conflict with its internal model of what its previous founders had started it off, would lead to unforeseen consequences that would then create an entire reality that is counter to what they had previously wanted.
Mm-hmm.
That is genius because I've never thought of it like that. I've never, for me, I think of it like Rockstar. I'm gonna build this thing. It's gonna be perfect. It's gonna put out in the world. It's gonna work just as great. When Facebook first started, they didn't think Facebook was gonna have 1 point something billion people on it doing.
I mean, they
a
hoped.
lot of stuff
Yeah, I'm sure they hoped. Yeah.
Yeah, you can only hope, But it's I think it's funny. We come back to the system because you're right. There's a relationship between the individual and the environment, right? This individual and the environment, and there's kind of there's a relationship between the two that tug with each other and kind of like feed. Also, there was something I really thought that Hale hit really well. I think that Hale, as they have set her up, will be the antagonist for the next season.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Granted that, she sees what Dolores has been doing and plans, and then she's like, "Ooh, plans of my own," and now she's post though, which I feel like, and she has control over Yellow. So now this is really cool because I don't know if they completely destroyed Rohan, but it has a lot of data. It has all the data, all the humans. On the other hand, Hale has hosts, the ability to create more hosts because she owns Delos. Because she killed the way that just Men in Black shit went down, bro. That was cold.
Yeah, it was.
Dude, I was like, oh, he's gonna fuck some shit up. He's like, yeah. And then he sees himself and he's like, I've been real this entire time? That was a mind fuck.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh snap. And then he had himself killed by himself. That is I was watching and that lost my shit. I didn't think that episode, this season, had the capacity to each episode just surprise me and surprise me and surprise me. And the whole Hale twist, how Hale became, she went from Dolores to Hale, just seemed to narratively work. They had put the work. It wasn't like Game of Thrones. It wasn't like at the end where Daenerys decides to turn into the Mad Queen. It was like they had put the legwork to set up the conflicts, to set up the way Hale was ruthless, to have characters reference the previous Hale and her inability to care so much about her family. The fact that Dolores cared that much about Hale's family that it showed a break in that process. It didn't fit right, and that was just amazing. Amazing how Hale was just shown to be ruthless in her ability to just kill for something she had cared for. Now, let's not forget, the Hale at the end is also somewhat Dolores, because I think the Hale at the end takes the parts of Dolores which care more about hosts and not as much about humans.
Mm-hmm.
It's analogous to how she turned the Man in Black from being a human to being a host to serve her purpose in being able to take more of, to take more of the resources of the world to be able to preserve hosts, which is counter to what Bernard would want to do, because Bernard probably wants to create a better world with the hosts and humans, which is probably in line with what Caleb and Maeve want. So these two characters probably would like the same thing. I'm speculating here, but Hale on the other hand is like, yeah, look, fuck all that shit. This is how we're going to do it, and it was just cold how she did it.
Well,
the way
yeah.
she shut down.
Hale pretty much is doing what we assumed Dolores wanted to do from the beginning. Well, original Dolores actually was the aberrant in what we actually thought her ultimate plan was, and it wasn't until Dolores Hale that plan actually came to fruition. We already had, again, maybe because of the we're actually kind of running the same system that Rehoboam is running, like without even realizing it as the viewer, wherein we're taking in past data points and we're already presupposing a timeline for Dolores prior to even considering what her new potentiality and parameters are with new information. Is we're like, no, like, Dolores, you're deviating from your plan, aren't you? Like, no, like, I'm not. Like,
Right?
I'm actually just, I'm going through the motions of what I perceive to be the right move, right? As opposed to just assuming that, no, Dolores, like, we know you, okay? We know exactly what you're supposed to be doing right now.
We know you.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and you're not doing it right. Like that is the, I think that's the presumptuous aspect that the show, in my personal opinion, wants you to get rid of. Like that you shouldn't be making these presuppositions about either an individual's ability, an individual's capacity to be able to change either for the better or for the worse. Because the moment that, again, you allow yourself these horse visors of only allowing past data points to dictate what the future will state, will give you a model of the potential future, but it will give you a model so myopic that you won't actually put into consideration how this person could eventually become an outlier, and in that becoming of an outlier, you always come to fear the unknown. Like that's one of the biggest aspects also of what the outliers represent, is the fact that they are essentially what the system fears, because they can't be calculated in the same way, or at least in the same smooth, easy way that everybody else can be. Because if you would recall, Solomon does, although it's supposedly a schizophrenic AI, it does manage to be able to formulate a timeline wherein hosts and outliers in the normal population can coexist in some fashion. And although in its predictions, human civilization ends in 150 years, again, as we were talking about earlier, what does the end of human civilization mean? Like, just like those words, although they sound foreboding from a first principles perspective, they don't actually take into account that what it could mean would be the beginning of, again, sentient civilization, or host civilization, whatever. It's like, because we're always under the presupposition, again, that because we're human, that we have to care a lot about human affairs, as opposed to perceiving ourselves from the perspective of an intelligent creature, of being like, I care about intelligent affairs. Does it really matter whether the individual doing the processing does it in a 2.5 pound wet, like a wet processor, or yeah, does it with wetware, or does it with actual, like, cybernetic parts? Like, if I as the intelligent as if I as an intelligent individual, if that is the aspect that I choose to actually put above my species, then at that point I'm actually looking at things from a more universalist perspective, because then everything is my kin. Everything that has the potential for reason and the potential to change its parameters and outlooks is actually my brother and my sister, much like any other human would be. And once we look at it from that perspective, then we can begin making a civilization that is the end of human civilization, and it is in fact a synthesis of all potential actors at the same time.
That's wow. That's interesting. I literally have nothing else to add. But I do think that I'll kind of segue into something I texted you. So up until watching this show, I was somewhat with the whole rock thing.
Mm-hmm.
At least the perspective in which you build something to help navigate the world. I've read books like there's a book called Life 3.0, which talks about the next phase of life, right? It talks about how life in the beginning was protozoas, fungi, bacteria. It moves into Life 2.0 with ER. How they boiled it down in the book, interesting about how life is there to pass on information, right? Pass on DNA is information, and so there's different modes of us being able to information. The first stage was passing on information unconsciously, and the second stage is passing on, subconsciously, and then in the third stage is passing it on consciously. And so Life 3.0 sets up the beginning this team of people. Essentially, it's exactly what Sorokin did. They ended up building an AI, that AI, but in Life 3.0, it's not even a fiction book, a non-fiction. Postulates how it is to create this AI that can then take advantage of Amazon, Amazon Web Service or Amazon Market, something like that. It basically aggregates enough information, enough data, enough money, and then it imposes upon the world its own perspective of how to get the best world. So I had already been working towards this kind of idea, and then I saw this, and this season deconstructed a lot of things that I thought initially when I went into it. One of the things was the whole perspective about having a centralized point of control.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that you want to build these things as a company, as a company within build these products and put them out to the world, and then the world can buy them. Rather now involve the world in building, because I understand now that it is erroneous to build these products, especially that have such a ubiquitous impact on the lives of people, agree or don't agree with it. Rather than letting it be that way, why don't you just engage with them in the building of these products, give them the ability to decide, role in it. People do want to world building. It's kind of fun. It's fun to be able to exercise your will, your ability utilized towards a greater cause. And this was a part of me that hadn't quite considered this. I looked at it from Bohan's perspective, where I was seeing the grandest scale of things, and I was seeing that, global warming and all these societal wrong things would kind of justify the suppression of free will in service to better humanity. And what does a better humanity mean? And so, and usually world like I usually say something lines of, oh, I'd like a world in which humans don't have to work for shelter and for education. Needs that I kind of thing. And then somebody would be like, well, what are humans gonna do then? And I'm like, well, you lack imagination, obviously, because the fact that you're not working for food or for shelter or for energy doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have the ability, the capacity to other things. Maybe you can learn how to paint. Go find out when you don't have to be a slave or a wage slave or slave who depends on wages, right?
Yeah.
Because the idea that it's kind of culture, and the idea that humans are placed on this earth to do work and to perpetuate these capitalist systems, the fact that I have to defend the whole perspective that building robots that can create food, shelter, and energy free and let you go discover what you want to do, I feel that is just a way that capitalism has really seeped into the mental way people think, because they can't think outside working, outside their whole role as a cog in the system that basically suppresses their ability to create, the ability to understand that they in of themselves are intelligent beings that can decide upon what they want to do. Sorry.
No, I get it.
But I feel like it's interesting because I have to answer these questions, and for me this show, this conversation, and just this entire experience has been in service to me understanding, yes, I want to build this world in which are given these basic needs, but it's not to suppress their own free will in pursuing whatever they want. And a good question that people pose is that Kevin always poses is that, okay, what if you're in this world and the thing I want to do after I have all the food, all the shelter, and all the energy, is to murder people? Is that like the morality? I didn't want to get into the whole debate about choosing what's right or wrong. I wanted to leave that to the individual, society, to communities that utilize such a system. And if somebody decides that they want to murder somebody, I'm not one to stop them. That is the decision that even if I was to stop them, I am limiting their free will, which is a slippery slope. If I'm going to start limiting people from killing other people, what's to limit me? Let's say having them buy styrofoam, having them go and use Facebook, because it's a slippery slope when you start limiting will, because then it allows the precedents to be set to limit will on different aspects, given that you had decided to limit them. So yes, in the myopic view that murder is wrong and somebody should murder, it's okay in a sense. And I'm not justifying murder here. What I'm justifying is somebody's will to do so. Obviously, there's consequences for murder, and this system would perpetuate those consequences. But the fact that I allow such variability for humans to be able to decide on their own what they want to do after the fact that they have, like, if you don't have to work for food, if you don't have to work for live or for the energy and education, then you get to decide whatever you want to do on the planet. You know, you can still go and grow more, do that, you know, but it doesn't mean that we are stopping that. It's just that, you know, I think this whole growing up in Africa and just not having food, and it molded me to a person who wants to provide food, but
just not having to think about it anymore. Just not having to think about it anymore. Like, it takes up, like, like having to think, I need to go get food takes processing power, and it takes time. It takes, you know, so much resource that you could, as you say, be thinking about something else, like being creative, or like, even writing a song that no one will listen to. Like, it doesn't really matter, because you're
right.
You're at least outputting and more variance into the ether in order for somebody, because just because somebody doesn't like your song today doesn't mean they won't like it next week. You know what I mean? Doesn't mean that it might not be a sleeper hit 2 years from now, that kind of thing.
Yep.
But
to get better.
Yeah, I mean, to add to your point about the whole murder aspect of it, and like how once you supposedly have enough data points, you could potentially begin to do like a Minority Report precog thing, where you can actually start potentially stopping people from committing a crime even before they do it. It's like how wait, you're entirely right in the sense that it's a slippery slope, because you as an individual don't want to have anybody be murdered, right? Because because the argument that could be very easily be made against limiting the free will of somebody to murder somebody else is the fact that that limitation is actually lower in terms of limiting than it is to ultimately completely eliminate the decisions of somebody who will be murdered, because that person will no longer get to make any decisions. Like, you have actually just completely axed all decision making from another node in the desire to maintain one facet of decision making from one. Like, because it isn't as though that individual, just because you're telling that individual you can't murder, that they can't then make other choices. Like, free will is still completely within the within the parameter of their within their parameter. It's just that aspect of it is locked away, at least in terms of the societal aspect of it. I mean, they can still jump the fence and like try to go do it if they so please, but right. We've already, we, like you said very, very early on, we work under social contracts, and one of those implicit social contracts is the fact that we are all actively trying to maximize our decision making capabilities, and murdering people is the ultimate act of decision-making elimination. And in doing so, you are pretty much removing more from the system than you are in fact adding in terms of your ability to make that decision. Like, one decision doesn't outweigh a whole lifetime's worth of potential decisions that could have been made. So, it's a very interesting balancing act that one has to do, because yes, you're entirely right in the sense that if you stop people from murdering other people as a result of their own innate desires, like it isn't because I need to go get food, it isn't because I need this money, you know what I mean? It's just because, hey man, I just have this morbid desire to just murder somebody. Like, that's just what I want to do. That's what my free will is leading me toward, essentially. Like, I would imagine that is exactly the kind of algorithmic consideration that Rehoboam has to make when it comes to these outliers. Like, it could very well be that a lot of these people just have these violent tendencies, or violence is so innate inside of their archetypical modality that if you allow them to continue going forward in that way, they will degenerate the game to a degree that nobody will either want to play anymore, or the game will no longer be safe in such a way that it can actually be reiterated, to eventually become a system. And if, again, the whole point of the system is to create a perpetual system that can then lead humanity for the rest of eternity, then the system is entirely based upon self-preservation. And Rehoboam wants to be able to remove as many outliers away from its own self-preservation as it possibly can. Because in fact, that is actually one of the bigger qualifications of being an outlier, is the fact that you run the potential of derailing the system so bad that Rehoboam is no longer useful. And if there is one thing Rehoboam wants to do, is be useful. So, at that point, you as the individual have a conflicting desire with the system as a whole. And, and considering the system has so much more power than you'll always just get, just destroyed from that perspective. It's tough, man. It's tough because you're entirely right in the sense that, nobody wants to be impotent in their ability to be able to affect reality, but at the same time, in the affecting, you are limiting other people's choices and desires. By you becoming president of a country, you make it so everybody else doesn't become president of a country. So you are already essentially you're alienating so many people, and you're also dictating one timeline wherein you are the president and getting to make all of the policy decisions. But at the same time, I mean, what other option is there? Like, I mean, if within the system that you're working in, the president is the one with the executive power, I mean, unless you actively want to change the system, like that's just the way by which you're going to have to play that role. And if you want to change the system and say, hey, I don't want to be president anymore, let's make like a parliamentary situation, like then at that point you capitulate your ability to make decisions for the system and pretty much go back down to the plateau of everybody being like, no, go back to being the president. We don't want to have a parliament system anymore. Like the system can reject your desire in that particular way too, even if your desire could be more egalitarian. Like there's a lot to, there's a reason why emperors and kings and like lords and feudal lords and stuff like that lasted for so long, and it's because there were so many people who, even in the lowest rung of reality, still benefited from knowing their place. Like being able to wake up in the morning and understand, okay, here's the role I play, and hey, the nice thing about my role is the fact that I get to complain. You know what I mean? Like as the drunk, or like as the beggar or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I get to talk shit about everybody. Like there is there's essentially like a give and take in every kind of in every role. Wherein if you're the shogun's right hand man, you can't say shit. You know what I mean? Like you have much less opinion than the barkeep at the down in the town that you actually like live in and stuff like that. Like they expect that barkeep to have his opinions and like mull and like talk around with people. Like that is one of the aspects and things that archetype will allow, while in your position you can't, even though you are quote unquote more powerful. So it's like there's always something to be given. Yeah. So yeah, it's like, and you as the shogun's right hand person, you could die from stating an improper opinion, wherein the barkeep could say the exact same words you just said and have nothing happen. Everybody laughs at the in the bar because you just said that joke. You know what I mean? So like everybody's a slave to a particular degree, so long as they allow themselves to become beholden by their role and become ingrained within a system. Like you can't have it both ways. It's that's one thing that I've always find very difficult about the even the concept of trying to mold the system that can lead everybody to like a more utilitarian, everybody's happy or the majority of people are happy kind of thing, is that I mean, happiness is so divergent, like perhaps happiness to that right-hand shogun's man is the ability to speak his mind, but he'll never get to be happy because he'll never get to speak his mind in the position that he's in. While the barkeep, his desire could just be like, oh, I want to have the kind of concubines that like the right-hand man, gets to have and all that stuff. You know what I mean? Like there's just like nobody ever gets to see again like the full picture. Everyone just only gets to see one small slit of the entire truth that is the system, and and everyone just complains about that, on
That's true.
within their own
And they're like,
field.
oh, what are, that's kind of what I getting to is that from my bottom rung of society, I look at what is them guys at the top doing? Like,
Mhm.
don't they see that shit is going to shit? And I think and I think I've come to this perspective. First things first. Yeah, it's fucking hard trying to think about what does it mean to create a system after this. I would say I'm more of a revolutionary. I grew up in a way that led me to have a disdain to authority. So ingrained within me is the I don't like authority. I don't like people with power because my life I've seen more than it being used for the greater good.
Right.
And with that being kind of my bias, I then became more of a revolutionary type. And so I read these books about psychology of evolution by Mr. Bone. Great book, by the way. The Crowd was similar guy. And this kind of describes how to go about it. And also looking at time from not just the French, but also the Haitian, how, the world withdrew their power to different Rome, Athens, like revolutions are in part to what is society's rise and fall, given revolutions that happen within them. Now, with that being the current understanding that I grew up with, especially with high school stuff, I have matured in my perspective. I have come to understand that history isn't made by the grand men, but history is made by the decisions of men. Not any type of grand man, but individual decisions, by decisions made by individuals. Those decisions are what make history. It is the free will of such individuals that lead to the history that we currently understand it as. And we can talk a little bit about that whole history, because this history that we learn is history written from the perspective of Western countries that won every war up until this point. So the history, if it was written by the Eastern side of things, like Chinese and Indians, who had become imperial powers, had then colonized the world, they would write their history that then would become our history a lot different. It would be Eastern-centric, and they would have their own values with it. So it's also important to understand that the current history and the current world is shaped by Romans, the Athenians, the Germanic tribes, all these over time. And I'm not going. There was a Machiavellian individual, kind of controlled everything. Vaccines. That is my way. I use our phrase to get to the perspective, because I'd have to have a theory in which this organization existed, and I have to assume so much, because they would have had to exist over 1,000 years, and then also assume that they would never find out, which is why people get into not even read. Look, whatever it is, I think, as you said, being essence, and the essence of the world right now, the way the world is, being of the world, I don't care about any of that stuff. But what I'm really trying to say here is the fact that the way the world exists right now is because of all the decisions that we have come to plot as the decisions made by individuals in the past. Now, as an individual in the present, seeing how the world is in the present, I have a decision to make. Either I choose to decide on building a revolution and going through the whole 9 yards and destroying the current way of society, but if you do that, what do you face it? Because the revolutions in of themselves are destructive. And I opted more of a kind of wordplay here, because I chose not to choose revolutions. It's still the same word. It's still, there's an R in revolution, which kind of denotes the repeating
a
of
cyclical
the same
aspect,
cycle,
yeah.
versus an evolution. Huh?
No, I'm just agreeing about the cyclical aspect of a revolution. Yeah, totally. Keep going.
Right, yeah. So it's the same thing over and over. But an evolution is new, which is hard, and it's really take the time to think about. You were talking, and I sat here, and I was puzzled because I had previous to this, I thought it was going to be a thing. Oh, I'll figure it out when I'm like in my 20s, and maybe I see 30s, and by the time I'm will be different. But it dawned upon me that I could turn 60 and not even have seen the consequences of the decisions that I made in my early 20s. Us talking about old people and how they thought about their themselves, and how William was sitting around that circle, talking to each version of himself before his old version that we meet was just so cool. And this is why we have these conversations, because in of themselves lethally introspect. And for me, this has been a lethal introspection, because I have been kind of diving into deeper motivations about what me and Sirach kind of connect on. Is the ability to be entrepreneurs, to build the technological that can then have an impact in the world, and that impact is based on our want the world to be like with the existing product. And that's a very delicate balance. And I think no man in of himself can really decide what that balance is without the inclusion of the environment. I think within a very then that environment is going to be affected by the decision. Jeez, that was a long sentence. But the whole point I'm trying to get is that the world seems like it's at a precipice that we need a change. Not just global warming, but also the fact that we have just up to revolution, right? So the season ends with revolution, right? Which is eerily similar to the the whole riots and things that are happening right now. I was watching that yesterday night, bro, and I felt it easy.
It's eerie, man.
I was like, yeah, what the hell, And so I'm sitting there, and I am, because they're struggling upon this, the insights of like the Facebooks and their power and their ability to use data to be able to go in a certain direction based on the decisions they've made. The system didn't initially get created to do that. It's just what it did based on its interaction with the environment. So when you said that, I was like, yeah, man, this is dope. Anyways, carry on. And so I'm watching this, and I'm seeing the riots happening in America, and I'm also it's kind of the Black Lives Matter, but the inherent idea within Black Lives Matter is that because Black people are in the bottom rung of society, and so their lives matter, because they're still at the bottom, but their lives matter too. Mm-hmm. And this has led me to think, and with the COVID-19 too, just kind of putting a pressure onto systems that were not working as good so far. In the past 10 years, the past decade, there was revolutions in Libya, Ethiopia, not Egypt. There was revolutions, and they were against totalitarian governments or government. Right. Seems like the culmination of it was these riots happening in America. So what am I really building up? It's a juxtaposition the show riots at the end with how the current state of it is. The riots, the people being unsatisfied with the living in it. Not just black people, but also I think fundamentally really think it's be a black people. It's a problem with anyone to access opportunities to be able to freely exercise your ability to use, and that kind of ability not to have access to those realms of choices is what having, and that is a loaded subject. It's a loaded context, because it's the show really hit it up, because I was watching that and I wasn't, but I also felt like it was a conversation to talk to you, because we didn't get to this point in the world, I think, because of it was definitely negligence from different people, and as humans are, which back to the whole sobriety, because accidentally, the whole Paris dropping a bomb on Paris, which was an accident in the Westworld, seems like it could be something possible, which might not be a bomb, but it could be something like a virus gets released,
Yeah.
maybe as an accident, maybe as not. I don't really care about, speculative aspect of it. It's just that the consequence of such widespread, the consequences of a decision, that the decision or the indecision leads to a reactionary choice by somebody. Like somebody like me. Like Ciroc wasn't a billionaire. He started off as a nobody. Just learned the math and worked really hard to get into a way he created something that has an impact, which is inherently the choice that he has. You or me or anybody go home, study how to start, gather a massive round of here, and then choose to either depose or impose their own will upon their realm of reality that is within anybody. And so the fact that we're at a point in which this choice is one of the choices that people with, which is to topple currently exist, social system, is an easy thing, because I feel like we have to go about it in a way so that we don't repeat what has already been done, but we also don't create problems that we're solving. So, if it's not just audience, but for you, I think this is a great realm of discussion to, not just discuss about the show and how the show portrayed it, how this is reflected upon our current world, and how that can support projections of how the show can take it, or we human, the current base reality, I don't know if it's base reality, but how we can also, I think that was a long sentence.
No, I agree 100%, man. It's essentially that the dance between the constrained and unconstrained worldview of either wanting to have the idealistic platonic form of what it means to have a righteous civilization, and what it means to have the world as it is and accept it for what it is, and the essentially margins of error that will inevitably come as a result of dealing with high variant creatures such as ourselves. And the issue that the thing that I really liked about Ciroc is the fact that he was a really good intermarriage between two things. Like, he understood that Rehoboam wasn't able to save all of humanity. Like, there were going to be outliers that unfortunately had to fall by the wayside in order for, again, like, the bigger block of humans to move forward in whatever vision it was that Rehoboam actually had for them. Let's just presuppose that Rehoboam wants to just maintain some form of stability, and like that's essentially what it wants to do. But as you were saying before, it's like when stability rots, eventually it comes to be that the environment changes so much that what you perceived to once be stable ground has now become quicksand as a result of the happenings underneath you. And because you have essentially created a population that only knows how to be able to handle things in one particular way, you have essentially opened them up to the the potentiality of being taken out very easily by something entirely else, such as the hosts. Like, the hosts essentially showcase, kind of like a virus into a system, how when you have supposedly a perfect model system, or a creature that is so hyper good at its niche, that in the moment that you change the circumstances by adding another player, that what once was can no longer be, because 2 + 2 no longer equals the kind of 4. Like, that's and that's essentially the kind of thing that happens. Is like, it isn't that 2 + 2 doesn't still equal 4. It's just that it isn't the same kind of thing that you thought. That it isn't. The arithmetic is different now, and and it's really interesting because it goes in every kind of way, from the biological to, in terms of evolutionary biology, we know that there have been animals that have been so good at existing in their environment that the moment that their environment changes, that's the thing that causes them to go extinct. It's their inability to adapt to something new that then causes their downfall. Not so much because of the fact that they bother to essentially put all of their evolutionary skill points into one bar, as opposed to diversifying it to the best of their ability. And that's essentially what I always saw was one of the biggest limitation that Rehoboam was doing, is the fact that It was molding humans to be something that would be great in terms of the civilization as it was. It wasn't taking into account the civilization itself changing as time went on. It was just trying to remold every new iteration of human to fit in, whatever role that the last person, like a CEO died. So now we have to have this new kid who's like maybe starting Yale right now, slowly but surely work himself up to be able to plug in that hole that one guy, just made. As opposed to potentially creating new avenues of thought and essentially giving more breathing room to the potentiality that the environment is actively changing underneath us, as opposed to assuming that the environment will always be the same and it's the human that has to be put in a proper little box in order for it to deal with it as it comes. It's really interesting because again, we come back to the impotence aspect of ourselves, where it's like we want to do something. Like I don't want to just sit around and be like, well, that's the world, you know what I mean? And we're just going to keep going on, alongside it. It's like there's this just strange intermarriage between the acceptance of inevitability, but also the understanding that within it, just like they said in Westworld, there are these white markers, where you can essentially pick a manifold of which way your vector is going to go. And it for the most part, your loop kind of runs pretty stable, but then you hit this white mark, and it is within those white marks that Rehoboam essentially it dislikes. It doesn't enjoy the fact that there are instances wherein you'll make the decision that it can't predict, or that you'll stop being useful to it in that particular way. And it's like any system that is actively trying to remove individuals' ability to be able to shift into a new modality is inherently dangerous, because you're removing one more potential modality that, although not useful today, could be useful some other time. For example, we talk about ancient Rome, right? Ancient Rome was at one point a republic, and then it became an empire. There were two instances of time within that same civilization where different modalities of political, power worked for that particular time. There wasn't anything inherent about a republic that made it that much better than having a strong, one centralized power individual. It was just what the environment required, as either the barbarians were coming in, or the splitting between the East and the West. It was the environment that was deciding what the best political aspect was, as opposed to the individual themselves. And in War and Peace, Leo Tolstoy actually talks about that in the sense of Napoleon, and how Napoleon, although he seems to be one of those great men of history, he was in fact just as constrained as every one of his soldiers in relation to the available options that he had at his disposal. What he means by that is, on the day that Napoleon captured Moscow, right? Do you honestly believe that Napoleon could have then said to his Frenchmen, okay guys, we did it, let's go back home? Impossible. That man was essentially stuck in the role that he was playing as emperor, and he had to continue forward, because if he would have told them to stop, they would have murdered him right then and there and put in another Napoleon who actually imbibed the spirit of the revolution, so to speak, and they would have moved on from there. That one individual, all he did was play his role as his archetype required. It wasn't so much that he was in fact doing anything that would put him under an extraordinary position that he was actually free. He was in fact just as enslaved to be there as the foot soldier was to be at the very front end of the line, because in the same way that foot soldier could have been like, nah guys, I'm gonna go back to my little village, I think I'm done playing war. He would have been hung. He would have been hung for treason right then and there. And the same thing would have happened to Napoleon, or the Tsar, or any one of their generals. They were essentially stuck inside of the role that they were playing, and at that point, the only choices that they had were the perpetuation of those roles. Because at the end of the day, self-preservation is the name of the game, and if self-preservation means having to retain the archetype that I'm doing right now, well, that's essentially what's going to end up having to happen. and the hosts essentially have the exact same situation, but it almost feels like in reverse, because the only way that the hosts can actually retain like their life is by allowing themselves to always remain blank slates. Because the moment that the hosts try to retain a memory, or try to say, no, 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 I was this person, you know what I mean, like Maeve is like, I had a daughter, you know what I mean, like well, like wishing to get stuck in a particular archetype essentially makes you useless to the system at that point, if the system has decided that that role is no longer the one that we need you to play anymore. In the same way, and to go back to Napoleon had the exact same issue when it came to his overuse of the emperor archetype. Eventually, it got to the point that him being the emperor was no longer something that the system acquiesced to, and he was essentially ousted and sent away because he was no longer willing to. Yeah, he thought himself, as he said, the revolution. He thought himself the system. And because of that, he presumed that he had the availability to then choose his role at will, when in reality, he was more blinded than most, in the sense that he, in fact, was very, very stuck in the little square that he could actually play in terms of what it was, in terms of what happened. Although it seems grandiose from the retrospective history, being able to choose, oh my gosh, like he got to make these people go this way and he got to make people go this way. In reality, did he actually make any form of choice? Like, because if he would have before the beginning of the invasion of Russia just been like, nah, you know what, I think I'm good just being the king of France, I think I'm just gonna do this, the people who put him in that position would have been like, haha, look at this, we have another despot, we have another person who just wanted to just use all of us in order to be able to get on the seat, and now that he's on the seat, he doesn't want to do anything, and then boom, the guillotine would have come right back out again, like they did for Robespierre. It just goes to show the fact that you shouldn't blind yourself, you shouldn't blind yourself to the fact that if you do exist in the system, you are just as much of a cog, even if you're a little shinier than most, and it's again within the dissonance comes from you assuming too much of your position, in the same way that Sirach did. He assumed that Rehoboam was always going to speak to him, that it was always going to be on his side, and in the end he used up, he stopped, he was Napoleon as long as the system needed him to be Napoleon, and then he was boop, you hear nothing in the ear anymore, it moves, the voice moves on to the next person, and that person is just left on their island, much like Napoleon, writing letters being like, I'm coming back, don't worry, I'll be back.
Slowly losing his mind.
Yeah, slowly losing his mind, exactly. And it's like, and that just it just seems to me like that's such an obvious situation when you delude yourself into believing that you are your role, and like it's, I have no real big point when it comes to this. I just thought that it was like a really like a super interesting thought, in the sense that we're all just actively deluding ourselves into perceiving, that like you know what I mean, as a programmer who has this idea of wanting to centralize systems in order to be able to make a more utilitarian world, then come to believe that as a result of you being the creator of the system, you are the father of the system, and as a result of that you have the ability to change the system, when in reality, much like any child, it leaves the nest and no longer has anything to do with you. Like maybe it will remember. Yeah, like maybe it will remember you by keeping your name, but that's not even that is guaranteed. Yeah.
That's clever. I'll end with this. There's a character who I'm really inspired by. His name is Quintius Lucius Cincinnati. Now he was a Roman statesman, emperor a little bit, and that's the cool thing about it. He's that he looked at his position as in a position, a role he could play, and he would go back to his farm and farm when Rome was in a war, it was in like turmoil. But when Rome was in turmoil, he would come back and leadership and lead them, and then he would step down again and stop. I think this is a really good. I look up to this character.
Like George Washington. Those are exactly the kind of that person that you're talking about is actually who inspired George Washington to not want to become king of the United States. He decided that once he was over with his administration, he's like, I'll be president for a little while, but then I'm off to my farm, man. It's this desire to want to be stuck in an archetype of power that puts us in in the shit situation that we were in when it came to the revolution. So yeah, that man has inspired so many people. You're in good company when it comes to that individual being the person to inspire you.
Yeah. I'm in good company right now.
Yeah.
Jose, Kevin, these guys are they offer me perspectives that allow me not to delude myself, because there's a sense of culture personality you gotta have to believe that you can go out there and build something. You gotta be able to delude yourself, be able to imagine and think that, oh yeah, something I can create can be able to do that. I'm not a complete it's not that I'm completely unaware of that. As much as I am aware of that, I'm also aware of the fact that as much as it is a delusion, it is one that I can afford to have it, granted past, but also the ability that, like you have been, my way of thinking towards being able to have these ideas. There was a book called The Art of something about, I think I'm forgetting the first one, but in it, the guy talks about ideas as spirits, right? And it's not even just in, I found this idea sprinkled out in different books. In those books, they talk about how ideas are spirits in themselves and they possess somebody. And the vessel of which is best at exemplifying that idea is the one which ends up, being known as that idea, being known as the father. The idea exists in of its own in the multiverse somewhere.
Sure.
They say that at the end of it, the multiverse is just a multiverse of ideas. Exist within this soup of ideas that pop into existence and pop out of it based on the molecules and vessels that can be constitute themselves to be able to express that idea. And so
that they have a frequency resonance to actually hold the idea within them, kind of thing, kind of like an antenna.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of. And so I was talking to Kevin one day, and I usually get really into these ideas, and ironically though, the way it kind of ended, I was like, holy shit, I'm just possessed by this idea. This directly contrasted with me understanding that I'm just playing a role. I don't eventually want to be able to CEO this company down. Like the fact that you have to be a CEO of a company die is stressful. Every single day you have to make decisions of life or death or death of organization. The same way over nature, right? It is stressful, and I can only imagine. I've never been in such a role, but I can only imagine that I have to make decisions on my day that either to the perpetuation of this character or to the consequent demise of the character. And even that, I still have my own anxieties about it. Like, am I making the right decision that will ensure the survivability of this body or not? And this anxiety based on it. And I imagine we had to make that decision or 7 billion. That is a lot of stress. And whenever we're talking about, a system that be able to be at 99% efficiency, that 1% of 7 billion people is still a lot of people. That's a lot of people. Making the wrong decision. Look, a lot of people will be happy, but this 1%, oh my god, they're gonna try to get you, bro. And so
they will find you.
I kind of, they will find you. There's somewhere out there, and I think it's important to understand that because these that's why I look up to systematics, because I wanted to build a system that wasn't central to any form or any role. The eventual power got down to themselves, and it was the aggregate of each individual making their choice that led to the perpetuation systems that they created. Then it's the understanding of that I actually think that is better than the actual itself. It's to let people understand that they themselves, with their decisions, their tiny individual decisions, perpetuate the current system of living that they're in. That I think is something that aids a lot of people, which doesn't lead them to seeing the world that they've built for themselves now. And there's no magic there. It's just that, we humans, we only take a sliver, a snapshot, to say, oh, what we are, this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But in essence, everything is evolving, everything is changing, and that change, being able to model that change, is really hard. If you imagine, we exist within a black box, and the only way we are aware of the outside world based on the feedback we get through the hands, eyes, noses, and the mouth. But even those senses, they're limited in their ability to be able to convey the complete information of what is outside. And it's based on these informations that we create a world model head. This world model then is evolved based on more information. So this is why creating an AI that can be able to not only create an internal world model of itself and of its world is hard, and then be able to model within that world model way that is in service to a large growth. That's hard.
Yeah.
In of itself, it's just, it's that's why we love this show.
Yep. And that's why
this show.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, and that's exactly why, again, I have to go back to stating the fact that Dolores made the right choice by just laying the system out bare. As you said, it isn't so much that the system is corrupt. The system is what it is. Now, humans, that you understand how the system views you, are you okay with that view? Are you okay with having it, place you in these positions? If you are, well, hey, cool. You know what I mean? Like, that is now your decision to make. But you are no longer just running it in a sleepwalking manner. Like you're actually being a contributing aspect to the perpetuation of the system, if you so find the system to be correct. But it just isn't happening outside of your periphery. Like, now you're entirely aware that when I go and take this coffee, like, it's like the system will log that, and it'll it'll consider the things that have come alongside it. And it's like, and like, that's real freedom. It's like nothing about what you're doing in your day-to-day life is changing, aside from the fact that that all of these things aggregate to an entity actively trying to algorithmize all of that in a particular way. Like, see, yeah, because Dolores makes the wisest choice in the analogy of the Chinese farmer. She goes, maybe. She goes, is it good that Rehoboam is making all these decisions for people? Maybe. The only way we can know is if the subjects within the experiment are okay with it at the end of the day. And that's an answer that has been left open so far, because again, right now we were only going through the initial stages of the grief process in terms of the new information that humanity received. We will see how the acceptance aspect of it looks like in season 4, and how they will go about, because I'm sure that there are probably in that reality a couple thousand billionaires, right, that look at the system and be like, okay, well, so Rehoboam, Insight was just gathering all our intel. Okay, well, seems like a pretty good idea. Like, how do we go about continuing that? You know what I mean? Like, just because the desire for control is a multi-headed hydra, and just because you cut Serac doesn't necessarily mean that now there won't be 3 more individuals who saw Serac's vision and they're like, we can do it better. Like we see where he messed up. And then just try to keep going from there in that, quasi dystopian outlook. And that's, unfortunately, for better or for worse, the real human aspect of it, right? Is the fact that now other people have the decision as to whether they want to perpetuate the system. It isn't that Rehoboam as a system is a priori bad. It's just that what was bad about it was its clandestine nature. And that's what essentially needed to be revealed at the end of the day. And which is why I'm really glad that what you're saying about your new perspective as to about you trying to make these systems, in the sense that your desire to create the systems isn't the issue. It's your desire to do so. I mean, your initial desire to have it to do so in the background of everybody's availability. I mean, periphery, but at the same time having that background be the thing that then pulls their strings after a while. Like therein lies the issue. At least as far as what the season was trying to showcase as like the overarching morality, as far as I understood it to be,
Yeah, and I think we needed to have this conversation. I think I needed to have this conversation with somebody else. This is like with you, because at the end of the day, it's an important one. One that I think we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Still in the middle of everything else. So I'm, very deep in books and goddamn mathematical equations. Trying to model infinity. Like, what the hell? Anyways, I think it's, it's a great episode. Do you have anything else you want to talk about? Because we have Ren for pretty good time.
Yeah, I'm looking at 3 hours over here in terms of the live for the OBS section. I think that's a little less than half of the whole season in terms of just reviewing the season.
Right?
So I think we did pretty good. We have 30 seconds of analysis for every minute of the season almost. So I mean, I think we did pretty good in terms of like dissecting this one.
That's true. I also think that we hit on a lot of major. Honestly, we haven't even talked about how the VR and AR be able to train soldiers, how they use those to be able to do therapy, to there's just so much that we can. Westworld, maybe we can do a season 2, and it depends how people.
It depends how we feel. Screw how anybody else feels. I mean, like, we've just talked to each other for 3 hours without the necessity for one input from any audience member. You know what I mean? It's like,
that's true.
Yeah, it's like we'll run this as we decide, because we are the autonomous individuals running the lethal introspection crew. All right? Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, we see the algorithm, and we see that the algorithm prefers 10-minute chunks at a time, but we say screw it. We don't care if we lose efficacy for autonomous like authenticity. Like I'm willing to have this tank in terms of views just to be able to have the ability to have the whole thing be in one concise place at the same time. There at the end of the day, that is another thing that the show really showcases, is what concessions are we willing to make within the systems that we're existing in. And to me, I will always be down for a multi-hour discussion, better than just little 4-minute sound bites or like little 4-minute videos of being like, this is what I think about this, like aspect of the
right.
Yeah, like this is us being genuine autonomous creatures, making the decision that although we know that there is a higher means for efficacy, that is not what we're going for. We're going for authenticity.
That's true. It's more yeah. Let me know what you want to you want me to view next time. See,
I was thinking Watchmen, man.
Kind of like,
Since you letting me borrow HBO, I'm thinking maybe Watchmen will be watching the show Watchmen.
Oh, bro, Watchmen is lit. Yeah. Actually, Watchmen will play right into what is happening in the world right now.
Sweet.
Watchmen. I'm just gonna leave it there.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for the next episode on Watchmen.
Hell yeah. Well, guys, and with this, I think that we're gonna cut it short at 3 hours. And yeah.
Darn it, only 3.
Yeah, Yeah, I need to eat. I gotta feed these animals. They're all staring at me real intent like, what's up, bro? What's up?
Hey, we about to have a revolution, man. You gonna feed us or not?
Yeah, honestly, I'm about to have a revolution in my own hands.
Right?
Oh, man.
That's true. Yeah, but I'm gonna let you go. Thanks for having me. Let me know. Kevin has watched them, so we'll rope him into the next one.
Oh, for sure. That sounds great.
Now, yeah, we'll also know how OBS and YouTube live stream works, so next time we'll be like, boom, boom, boom. We'll be in it.
Yes. Yes.
Other than that, thank you for having me again, Jose. Thank you for watching. Honestly, I think amazing. I always love having these conversations. I think it's a show. The show itself was a way for me to also have a reflection, and then I also wanted to have a conversation with you because the aspects of it that really are core and central to what I've been trying, and that mesh led to this kind of I think this amazing. I'm gonna go watch.